Yo, what up, man? If you can hear me in the chat, man, just push one. Hey, what's going on, David Monroe? Mega Montana, what's going on? Keep it techie, peace. What's going on, Johnny Blaze? I needed to do this. And I hate to use the channel for this reason. But you have these people who claim to be hashtaggers, you know, these Black Americans or African Americans, Afro Americans, whatever you want to call them, okay? I was supposed to debate someone the other day, and I decided that a debate between me and this person on TPOT would not be beneficial at all to either one of us. There's nothing for us to really talk about, okay? Black immigrants was a topic that we did last week. And there's this discussion about the viability of Black Americans and or Black immigrants coming to this country and whatnot, okay? I went to Africa back in February, okay? I went to Rwanda and then I went to South Africa, okay? I was invited last year and I ended up showing up this year. So I was invited by high delegates who said they wanted to have me over there, and so I showed up, okay? I met with these people early last year, 2019, I think 2018 as well. And they said, you know, they wanted me to show up to these events. And so I did. And so you have this sort of opposition to Pan-Africanism, okay? Never claimed to be a Pan-Africanist from the onslaught of all of this. My perspective has always been that there should be solidarity for Black people on a global scale, for those who are melanated, okay? Whether they agree, whether everyone agrees or not, I believe that should be the course forward. And you can go back 100 years and that's always been this agenda, okay? That agenda has always been on the table. Kenny B, what up? D Dosit, what up? And so there's been a lot of pushback. And I got email after email after email from a subscriber of ours who says that Africa doesn't have electricity or running water. And we had this discussion a few months ago. Engineering Cannabis, our esteemed brethren, came onto the panel to correct this person about these allegations, okay? And this idea that there's no electricity in Africa, there's no running water, right? That's what this person's claim was. So Engineering Cannabis decided to come onto the panel and say, where did you go in Nigeria? He said, I was in Nigeria. Where was you? He said, I was in Lagos. What part of Lagos? Lagos is a big city. There's 200 million people inside Nigeria. Where did you go? Oh, well, he couldn't articulate where he was, what time it was that they did not have this running water. So now he changed the conversation. This person has changed the conversation to clean water, okay? At first it was running water, and now it's clean water today. And so this person decided that they were going to forward, send more emails to me about, the viability of, clean water inside Africa, because the coronavirus and the doc that came out from the, Nigerian Medical Association or African Medical Association about there's not enough clean water to for the hospitals, you know, in terms of like an infrastructure issue, right, and how to deal with COVID. Okay. Engineering Cannabis asked this person specifically, where did you go where this was not happening? He could not pinpoint it, and so we could not confirm or deny what his claims were, nor could he confirm. Okay, all we know is that there's water in Africa, and I put up a map on the community tab that specifically highlighted water starvation in these areas. Let me share the community tab, man. This person is very persistent. Okay. Go to the community tab. Let me share the community tab. All right, here it is right here. Now this map, I posted this 4 weeks ago. Let me span this out. It says, this is from Quartz, okay? It's a very reputable source. Institute of Aqueduct Global Maps, okay? It says the geography of water stress. Disruption to the global supply chains can also stem from geopolitical conflict, which is likely to increase as water-stressed countries battle for control of fresh water sources. Water insecurity and scarcity in particular is unevenly distributed around the world. Large swaths of North Africa and the Middle East and Asia face medium to extremely high water risk. So it's not just an African thing as this person made it. But if you look at the map, you'll see that the areas in blue indicate low water stress, okay? All of the areas in sub-Saharan Africa, where all the melanated people are, have low water stress, okay? We were told that this is, you know, they don't have running water. Initially, that's what was told to us, okay? If you look at Canada, Canada is blue and so is the sub-Saharan Africa, okay? Green represents medium. The United States is in a medium low stress measure for water stress, okay? You also have several sub-Saharan African countries that have low water stress, medium to low water stress, okay? Very few African countries in sub-Saharan Africa are red, high or extremely high water stress, okay? So this person decides to email me and say, show me these links of there's no running water in Africa. But how is that the case? So I put up this caption here that says, some people had said that sub-Saharan Africa lacks water. The image begs to differ, okay? For whatever reason, this person doesn't seem to either read or lacks comprehension. And so they're dissatisfied with this image. They don't like it. And so what the person decides to do is to potentially email me more links pointing to water scarcity in Africa. This is silly. This is coming from, this isn't me making this up, right? This is from the World Resources Institute or Aqueduct Global Maps. I don't have anything to do with this. Okay? My brother Mufasa Shabazz says, I had no issue finding water. They walk around anywhere there is traffic for a few cents per pouch. So I'm not sure why there's so much emphasis put behind whether or not the continent has any running water or clean water. Because let's look at Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan water crisis, okay? The Flint water crisis is a public health crisis that started in 2014. After the drinking water source for the city of Flint, Michigan was changed. In April 2014, Flint changed its water source from treated Detroit water and sewage department water to the Flint River. Okay. That's not me making this up. This is what the water looks like. Okay. That's what the water looks like. This person wants to come in here and tell me that Africa doesn't have any clean drinking water. But what about in your own country? Black people don't even control the resources of their own neighborhoods and can determine the outcome of their own water. This is not just Flint's problem. This is happening all over the United States. We covered this sometime last year, I think early last year, about climate change in Black America and how it impacts them. And what you have is people, let me show this other thing here. Lead poisoning, water crisis, okay? The only reason to highlight in Flint is because it made news. You can see from this image right here, it shows the cleanliness of Detroit versus Flint. But the point of the matter here is this. This person is persistent on this idea that Africa just has this sort of, Africans are drinking out of puddles and eating mud pies and things like that. I didn't see that when I was over there. Okay. So this idea that we should debate about this, there's nothing to debate about. What is there to debate about? This is the color of Flint's water in America. Why aren't you talking about that? And all those Black people up there drinking this color water. This is what they were bathing in. All types of dermatological issues to their skin, rashes and eczema and type of stuff. You don't want to have a conversation about that because you want to focus pointing the finger at the continent. And for what? I don't want to have a conversation with you about whether or not Nigeria has clean running water. What are you talking about? Engineering cannabis is from Lagos. He's from Nigeria. He can tell you firsthand about what's going on over there. My brother Mufasa Shabazz in the chat can tell you what's going on over there. He just came from there not too long ago. But you want the Black Brain Trust to have a fixed focus on clean running water in Nigeria, but you don't want to talk about what's going on in your own country in the United States. And you're so proud to be an American. You wear the MAGA hat, you wrap yourself in the American flag. And you don't want to talk about what's going on here, but you want to talk about what's going on over there. And you trust the very agencies, CIA, FBI, DIA, NSA, DHS, you trust all of them on their reports about the continent, but you don't trust the news about what's going on in your own country. But you want to tell Africans how to, they should go clean their own water, go clean up their own infrastructure and build their own infrastructure. Well, you got poor infrastructure in your own country. All this smoke, for me, going to the continent. All this smoke for the articles that the Black Brain Trust covers about the continent. Why? We didn't say anything negative about anybody in particular. We just said this is what's going on over here. They got startups going, they got tech going, they're doing big things in terms of fourth industrialization, and everybody got smoke. Why? Okay. Right here in the United States, you have all of this going on. And you're gonna tell me that that's not important. I wish I could share the email with you so you can see the clusterfuck that is coming out of some people's mouths. And so the point that I'm making here is this. You want to be pro-American, fine. I have no qualms about that. What you do on your channel is what you do on your channel. But when you start critiquing the Black Brain Trust about what we talk about, and you're not an investor in the channel, you're not a stakeholder, now it just turns into cyber harassment, okay? You're harassing us now on what we talk about and what we cover, okay? Let me pull up some other pictures, man. Let me pull up. What about this? This is supposed to be Detroit Black neighborhoods during COVID. This is only last week, last Monday. Okay, this was last Monday. Look at these houses. Look at the street. This is in Detroit. But the opposition wants to come here and say, we don't need Pan-Africanism. That's hogwash, right? Okay, that's fine. But what are you doing here though? Wrapping yourself in that American flag, putting on those MAGA hats. The tangerine tyrant in the White House is going to save you. He's going to bring back factory jobs and manufacturing jobs and so on and so forth. Where you at though? Where's the opposition? Go get the opposition. I know you're watching. Get the opposition. Come on to the panel. I'll put a link in the chat if you want to get on, and we can have the discussion. But don't tell me that we're fooling our subscribers. We're pushing, a false narrative of the continent and everything else. We cover the articles as they come in. These are reputable sources that we get our articles from, and then you turn back around and say, well, that's hogwash. Well, talk to the author of the article. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to Complex. Don't talk to Nagone 11. We didn't make this up. Okay? This is Detroit right now, last Monday. Look at this. Look at this. They never recovered from 2008. I think they said something like 30,000 Black people left Detroit in the span of a couple of years. 30,000. That's one person every hour at best. Okay. But you want me or the Black Brain Trust to cover articles talking about the lack of infrastructure in Africa. Why? What's the point of that? Well, then he comes back and he tells me that we don't cover it, right? The lack of infrastructure in Africa is not so much about the incompetence of African leaders, okay? It's more about the colonialism aspect of European powers and how they extract resources from the continent and don't replenish it back. So the infrastructure that's there was built during the colonialist time, okay? It was built during colonialist time. And what has happened is that the way the continent has been structured from an infrastructure standpoint was only to benefit the colonialists. It wasn't to benefit melanated people. And so when you start talking about building out infrastructure, water filtration facilities, and so on and so forth, that takes time. Okay, that takes time. This is Detroit in 2020, March 30th. This isn't Detroit in the 1930s. This is Detroit in 2020 during the COVID crisis on lockdown. But you'll tell me, look at this. You'll tell me that Atlanta is doing great because there's a black woman mayor who is there who's going to put in a $4 billion sewage system. Now you have Gabe A in the chat who says, I know you're trying to prove a point, but Detroit has recovered significantly, shaking your head. You can shake your head all you want to. That's an actual house in Detroit. That's not me making this up. That's Charlie Boy who covered it. As a matter of fact, there's many videos covering these rundown cities and these rundown black neighborhoods across America. I'm not making this up. Black people don't have control over their infrastructure in the way that this person is articulating. Gabe A says one street on the west side does not tell the whole story of the city. It doesn't matter. Black people don't control that. Black people don't control that. What difference does it make? They don't control the infrastructure, the import and export of goods, the political institutions. They don't control any of that. But the same people who come from these areas want to point the finger at the continent and say they need to go clean up their water. What the hell are you talking about? You don't even control your own water resources. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? That's the problem I have with these pro-Americans. They love America so much. They wrap themselves in the flag. They got the MAGA hats on, or at least virtually speaking, they have their MAGA hats on. You love the country so much, but you don't control any of the infrastructure, the import and export of goods, or the political institutions. Why are you so concerned about what goes on the continent than what goes on here? Go control your own infrastructure, and then you can have a conversation. See, everybody else in the chat understands what I'm talking about except for Gabe A. So what Gabe A does, like this other gentleman who keeps emailing me, is they deflect. And they're contrarian for one reason and one reason only, is because they don't have a proper response. And so they have an improper response to everything, right? He says, I own 4 homes on the west side of Detroit, Michigan. I control my property. What are you talking about? You don't control the infrastructure that's in the street, bro. The public infrastructure, the water and sewage, you don't control that. So if you get poisonous water coming into your house, you have no control over that. You have zero control over that. Eminent domain that the United States government uses can take those homes from you just as quick as you bought them. They don't care. They do it to the Native Americans all the time. They ran a whole pipeline through the DAPL, which is the Dakota Access Pipeline. They ran it right through their land, through eminent domain. You think they won't come take your house? This is the mindset of a colonized Negro. This is the mindset. I'm safe, wrap myself in American flag, MAGA hats everywhere. Atos this, FBA that. How much of the infrastructure do you control in this country? You control nothing. You control nothing. If they turn the lights off, they tell you to go in the house, you're going in the house, man. What are you talking about? No, Gabe is not a bot. He's not a bot. He's being contrarian. He's being contrarian. I like Gabe. He's my dude, man. But it's the mentality, man. I can't really rock with the colonialist mentality that most Black Americans have. The melanated people, for whatever reason in this country, their idea is that because they live within a white colonialist structure of operation, that, you know, we's good, boss. We's sick, boss. That sort of mentality. I don't have time for that, man. I'm not going to sit here and debate about this. What is there to debate about? What are you debating about? This is Detroit. I'm not making this up. Charlie Boy posted this. Let's look at the unemployment rate for Black men in America. And we covered this before. This is from the Economic Policy Institute. Let me share my screen real quick. Black unemployment rate is at least twice as high as white unemployment rate at the national level and in 14 states and in the District of Columbia, okay? See if I can pull up the map. Unemployment rate by race and ethnicity, okay? Let's look at Black. For Illinois, it's double. For Michigan, it's double, okay? Mufasa, my brother, if you want to get on, you can get on. No, Gabe says, I'm not being contrarian. I'm bringing up a different opinion and you just don't like it. My points are not opinions, man. My points are not opinions. This is facts. Flint, Michigan has a water crisis and Black people have no control over that. But they want to tell you, this person wants to tell you, or the Brain Trust subscribers, that we should look at Nigeria's water crisis over there, and that they have poor water over there. Right? That's what this person told me. And so when Engineering Cannabis asked him, where did you go in Nigeria where this was happening, he couldn't answer it. And so I asked, well, where's your where's your facts? He ran and found some links that says that there's water issues over in Africa. That has nothing to do with what you said. You said that they didn't have any running water inside Nigeria. My brother Mufasa was just there not too long ago. I know, I talk to people over there all the time on a daily basis, okay? On a daily basis, I'm interacting with them. This isn't the issue over there, okay? America has a massive infrastructure issue of pipes. Most of the pipes in this country were laid down in the 1890s, okay? It was laid down in the 1890s to the 1900s. They need to be replaced. Most of them are filled, creating lead poisoning inside the water. They have to be replaced. There is no question about this. Okay, the city of Boston has a massive infrastructure plan to replace all the pipes. It's going to take at least 30 years, man. It's a 30-year project. If you're telling me that to replace all the pipes is 30 years, what do you think it's going to be for the continent? It could be twice as long to do something like that. To roll out infrastructure like that because of the way the country was designed, or the countries were designed. Yeah, but I don't care about the facts of Detroit. I don't. What I'm saying about putting boots on the ground in Detroit, I don't care about that. I was just showing the pictures because this person who emailed me was trying to make it seem as if Black people live in some kind of luxury tenements, and that's not the case. Let me drop the link for Mufasa. Let me drop the link for Mufasa because I want to get Mufasa on. So this person had emailed, right? And let me see if I can find the email. Stop blaming colonialism. That's another one, right? So the colonialist aspect, you shouldn't use that for justification as to why things are broken. Anywhere you go where there's colonialist rule or post-colonialist rule, it's always broken. Decolonization takes time. It's not something that happens overnight, right? Even, what do you call it? Iran, when they overthrew the Shah and they were forced to decolonize the Persian state, they're still making transitions out of the overthrow of the Shah in 1979, right? So that's over 35 years ago. Okay, let me advance Mufasa. Let me see what's going on here. Mufasa, can you hear me?
All right, you hear me?
I can hear you, bro. What's going on?
Not too much. It's interesting you brought this up because I was just having a conversation with a friend. He was watching a documentary. It was talking about how there was no water and how this and that and Lagos, and like he had this whole spiel after he watched the documentary. I was like, bro, I just left Lagos. I didn't see that at all. And what I was saying earlier in the comments was that literally anywhere you drive, and I was trying to find, because Channels, they just did a breakdown. I don't know if I can share my screen, but Channels Television just did a special on this, just talking about all the people that are selling things to you while you're waiting. It probably was the same in Rwanda, like when you're in traffic and people are selling, walking around with water on their head, different like little peanuts and little things that you can buy. There's literally water everywhere. Like everywhere you're going, anytime you meet any choke point where there's traffic, there's people are walking around with water on their heads, selling pouches of water, bottles of water. There's literally water anywhere that you go. And like I said, I was not just in Lagos, which is the main city, but most of the majority of my time I still spent in Osun State, which is the same thing there. Like you could pretty much get water everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And there was let me see. I didn't go into too much of a rural area while I was in Nigeria, but in Ghana, like I said, I was in, like out in the village, and it's the same thing. Like we in Nigeria, we went to hike like on the border of, man, it's Osun. I forget I don't want to say the wrong state, but we went to eat at this basically like a makeshift restaurant. They're basically selling bush meat and jollof and different things, cooking right there. There's no, they just have some sticks and a little sheet metal roof, and they're cooking in the middle of there. They got water and it's cold. They're literally outside roasting and cooking, like outside. There's no nothing. They're selling bush meat basically on the side of the road, and there's plenty of water there. So, and then somebody said something about tourists. It's not, okay. I thought he was gonna say it was just for the tourists. I was about to say there's barely any tourists out there. They're selling bush meat on the side of the road right there. They got a pop-up makeshift restaurant, no problem getting water.
But see, that's
It was so scarce. Why is there no crime associated with this water? You got 10-year-old kids walking around with water on their head. People would be stealing it.
yeah. But see, that's the attitude that this person Gabe has in the chat, right? That Lagos is for tourists. That's like saying New York City is for tourists. LA is for tourists. You don't hear anybody saying, let's show West Virginia the trailer parks, right? You don't hear people talking like that.
Right.
That's the mentality though, right? That's the colonialist mentality that people have, man.
Right. And then, like I said, I mean, he wasn't listening to me because I wasn't even, like I told him, majority of my time wasn't even spent in Lagos. You have more things in Lagos, but I was in Ocean State and there's plenty of water.
Mm-hmm.
If I could pull up I don't know how I can pull up my my photos here, but I can show you because I was looking at the water.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let me see. I have some Instagram little stories where I was like looking at the different water. I was always trying to buy local because Coca-Cola has a product out there by a different name. And I was looking at all the water, different waters and things like that.
I'm not saying that, the continent is this big utopia and it's like Wakanda. No. It's not even what I'm talking about. This person specifically said there was no running water in Maine, Nigeria. Engineering Cannabis jumped on and said, where did you go? I'm from Lagos. Where did you go? Where there was no running water. He couldn't pinpoint it. Very frustrating, right? Because you're trying to have this real dialogue and this person is like, well, I don't know what you're talking. I don't know where it is. Okay. So why did you say it then? See, the idea here is to discredit non-Black Americans, right? The idea is anybody comes from the continent, from the Caribbean, go back to your own countries, this sort of xenophobic perspective that's anti-Pan-African. You don't have to be a Pan-Africanist if you don't want to be. You want to wrap yourself in the American flag, you want to wear MAGA hats and all that stuff, go ahead. You go ahead and do that.
Well, see, the thing is that people are comfortable with the narrative that they know, and what's happening today is you got people like Dinah showing up. We got the Black Brain Trust actually pulling up documents and data, bringing brothers from the continent, spitting real information. So now it's getting to the point where you can't get over with that kind of stuff. Somebody's going to jump on the panel and check you. You can't go with these bullshit, false narratives anymore. It's people who just got from the continent last month that's going to jump on the panel and say, where'd you go? You know what I'm saying? Like, give us the information, prove it. And that shit is about to be over with, bro. It's too late. They can't do that shit anymore. And that's why it's good what you guys are doing, because we're there. We got pictures I could prove or whatever. If anybody, this guy, if he's saying he had no running water, I doubt that. Now, there are some places with plumbing issues. I will give you that. I will say that.
Absolutely. You can go anywhere in the United States right now in some of the rural areas and see that there's infrastructure issues. Bridges collapsing in Washington and Minnesota and potholes not being filled for years in New York City. No one ever talks about that though. But it always comes from the Negroes who want to sit up here and say, look at this and look at that over there. You don't control your own resources, bro. What are you talking about?
When I was talking to my buddy, I didn't even think of Flint, Michigan. That's a checkmate right there. Until they fix that water, you can't say shit about nobody.
But Flint isn't the only place. There's many places that are Black that have this issue of there's a brother on YouTube who goes on O'Shea's channel. I can't remember his name right now, but he's a civil engineer. He works on water filtration. And he talked about this a couple of years ago, I think a year or so ago, about how bad the water is. And Dr. Phoenix, who's been on our panel many times, talked about lead poisoning in Black people.
Hey, Mike. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, how you doing, brother?
Thanks for having me on the panel. I have a question. What do you mean when you say you don't control your resources?
Meaning
or you don't control the infrastructure? Meaning
that the infrastructure that gets put in the ground, Black people do not have a stake in this, right? They're not sitting at the table. No one's picking up the phone and calling David and saying, hey, we need you to come down to City Hall right now and so we can have a conversation about laying down new fiber optic cables and whatnot. No one's calling Black people for that. They don't have any stake in this, right? You understand what I'm saying? There's no political capital that Black people can hold on to right now at this point. I mean, maybe Black women, but Black men are not in control of these things. So you have Black men who come on here and say, you shouldn't talk about that we're fooling people that Africa is this sort of utopia and that you shouldn't talk about it. And I'm saying, where else are you going to get Black leadership in this world right now other than Africa and the Caribbean? You're not going to get it here because the Black leadership here has completely sold out the community, right? Would you agree or disagree?
Sold out. I mean, what do you mean sold out?
Sold out. Yeah, sold out. That the interests of Black people are not being met. It has been leverage their vote to get people in office, but to not actually reach the best interests of those Black people. That's why you see so many Black neighborhoods are run down.
I do agree with you to some extent, but anyway, I just wanted to say that I was born in Africa. I was born in East Africa. I came here when I was a little child. I'm almost 30 years old now, and there's no way I would be where I am in my life right now if it wasn't for America. And that's why I love this country. And, you know, it just amazes me when I hear people, you know, despise this country and try to elevate. And I'm not picking at you, but to try to elevate places like Africa. Africa still has a long way to go. And I can tell Africa has a long way to go.
Well, can I cut you off really quick before you go too far off on a tangent? Because it's
I'm not
a
going
difference
to tangent.
between.
I'm just.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Okay, well, away from what we were on. Mike's statement, you called in, the first thing you said was that we don't control the infrastructure. Control over the infrastructure is a totally different argument between the efficacy of the United States as a country and an African country. You understand what I mean? They control your water. In Africa, you control your water. So these are two different arguments.
Mm-hmm.
You know
how do they control water? There are systems in Africa too, just like
okay,
they
but
have
let me ask you.
Just like you have water companies, they have water companies in Africa too.
Yeah, privatization.
Okay, who runs them?
The companies run them, not the people.
No. I think what he's saying is, do melanated people run those companies, or is it the European colonizer?
Well, it's African people. Yes, it's African people that run it. Same here. There's some Black people who are part of these water companies, who had these water companies. There are Black people who are part of the city councils. Flint, Michigan mm-hmm. has a huge amount of Black people in its city council, right? That run the city.
Right.
It's not fully run by white people. Baltimore City has close to 100% city councils controlled by Black people.
Yeah, but the city of Baltimore is not some metropolis, man. It's not a metropolis. We have several people from Baltimore. I think some of them in the chat said this is not a metropolis. This is not.
That's true. That's true. But I mean,
you got to remember, the city is in the county, which is in the state, which is in the country. So it's a lot of levels, way higher than the city council.
And Mike, I agree with you when you say Black people sold out their own. I mean, look at the leadership. They've sold out their people. They're not looking out for their people. I agree with you on that.
But beyond that, though, structurally, right? So if we say, if people talk about African leaders being sellouts, right? They're in the position to sell out structurally, right? So that president has to push that button. We're not even in a position structurally to control a lot of these things. You can't say that there's Black people alone who are in charge of, if they push the button and fix the pipes in Flint. That's not Black people's decision. It isn't.
Well, anyway, the conversation is really not about that. To me, what I've been listening to. That was the question
you asked, though. You said, why? You said, how do we not control it?
No.
I'm telling you, because we can't fix the water in Flint, that proves that you're not controlling it. It's someone else's
My
decision.
question was, I only asked Mike what he meant by that. I didn't ask that question you just said.
So, so to answer your question and kind of reiterate again, is that Black people are not in control of these resources, man. They're not.
Okay, but anyway,
you have Native Americans who have their own land in this country, been reappropriated land for them, and you still have private interests that come through with oil pipelines and fracking in their lands. What I'm saying here is the Black people who have all this criticism for the continent don't have any criticism for the leadership in their country and the lack of leadership and the lack of control of their own infrastructure. They don't have any criticism over that. They love it just the way it is. This is the mindset of a colonized Negro, bro. This is what we're talking about. They'll defend America against Africa, but then expect to have a civil conversation. How can you have a civil conversation?
But I think those are two different subjects. Well, I think those are two different subjects because one is you're talking about criticizing or having power, and then another one you're talking about you're talking about the type of life here versus a life back in Africa, and opportunities here versus opportunities in Africa. So I think those are two different things.
No, that's not what we were even talking about. It's not what we were even talking about. The original conversation that happened a couple months ago was that Africa is the shithole, okay? This is a Black person saying this. These are Black people saying this, okay? There's people on YouTube right now who are Black who are saying this same thing that Trump said. They're parroting what Trump said. They're parroting what white people say, okay? I went over there for myself. I went all around Rwanda and Kigali, beautiful city, okay? Paul Kagame gets a lot of praise. I didn't know why he was getting all this praise till I got over there. You can't say anything negative about this guy. People will look at you crazy. Not because they're brainwashed, but because they thank him for what he's done. But when you come to America, you have these Black people who ain't doing nothing. In contrast to what this guy's doing, and they got a lot of smoke for what goes on over there, but nothing for what goes on over here. All this lead poisoning for Black people ain't coming out of nowhere, man. Why not have a conversation about the lead poisoning in Black people instead of talking about whether or not Nigeria has running water or clean water? What's the value of that conversation? Tony, you jumped on the panel, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just kind of to add on to kind of the question or statement that you are making right now, man. Unfortunately, the reason that you don't see many of us here in the US actually speaking out with our chest out the way that we do on the continent is because that, we're just really out here living in a kind of a delusional state. I don't believe that we really want to have a true understanding. And, Antonio Moore talks about this a lot, actually. Like, we don't really want to take it seriously or have an actual understanding of how bad we're actually doing here. So it's better for us mentally to just pretend that, yeah, things are bad, but it's worse over there. So that makes me feel better. You know what I'm saying? And that's basically what I see. I think a couple of days ago, I saw a tweet, right? I was checking my mentions, and I guess I made mention of the Black Brain Trust on my Twitter, telling people to go, subscribe to the channel. And there's an ADOS brother that responded that follows me. And basically he said, the Black Brain Trust has interesting topics, but they're always talking about how useless ADOS is. And that just goes back to the whole delusional thing aspect of it. You guys never talk down and say ADOS is useless. You speak on the reality of what's going on here, but unfortunately, we just don't want to face it.
And jobless rates. I think in Baltimore, the jobless rate for Black men there is something like 48%, 52%, something like that. St. Louis is something similarly high. Chicago. But these same people who want to wrap themselves in the flag, put on MAGA hats, don't want to have that conversation. Go to their channels, won't have the conversation over there, but want to criticize everybody who talks about Pan-Africanism or, Black empowerment across the water. I don't understand this.
And also, when you're looking at the data that you've displayed many times on many episodes as well, when you look at the trajectory of the continent as a whole, you can go country by country or just the continent as a whole. The trajectory of it is going upwards as it pertains to them building up their infrastructure via the fourth industrial revolution or using fourth industrial revolution technologies. Their trajectory is going up. You've kind of proven that time and time again. But when you look at the trajectory of ADOS here in America, it's plummeting down. When you talk about 2053 zero net worth and 2022 30% of black men being completely displaced by artificial intelligence and automation, we're spiraling down over here versus on the continent where all the data that you've shown shows that everything's skyrocketing over there. Or I shouldn't say skyrocket, I don't want to over exaggerate, but the trajectory over there is up. Over
Yeah.
here for us is down.
It has to go up for them. It has to go up for them. It can't go downwards. It can only go up, right? I met a person, I think last year, or maybe in 2018, who, it was actually in 2018, who was running a cloud computing Linux boot camp, okay? And I asked him, I said, what do you think the trajectory is, for open source on the continent in Latin America? He said, actually, let me show you something. He pulled out his laptop and he showed me this program, not program, but a African boot camp that they're running over there. I had no idea that these people were doing things like this. He said they're figuring this out in 1 week. 1 week, they're figuring this out, 7 days. They're writing code, they're understanding Linux, they're launching cloud instances, AWS, Azure, OpenStack, blockchain. They're doing all of this in weeks and months, right? This boot camp. And so when I hear people say, these people are living in mud huts, they're eating out of trash cans and this and that, you can go to America and see plenty of poverty here. But see, those same black people don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to have that conversation, period. They only want to have a conversation about what's going on over there in Haiti and Jamaica. There's so much out of wedlock birth rates. Like, that concerns you. Like, that's a big concern, out of wedlock birth rates. When did you become conservative? You're a liberal. You've been liberal, your whole perspective is liberal. If anything, you actually support that here because you have high out of wedlock birth rates here too, but you don't have any concern over that. You just want to point the finger to what you think is the failings of those countries, but when it comes to here, you have a blind eye and a deaf ear. I can't entertain, that sort of conversation. So I open up the platform so this opposition can come on the platform and actually state their opposition. What is your opposition to what's going on over there, or Pan-Africanism, or anything like that? You don't have to be a Pan-Africanist. If you're in opposition to it, come on the panel. If you're a Black American and you love the flag and you love the hashtag and all that stuff, okay. But what are you doing here? Because at some point, these Black people, these Black Zennials who are 17, 18 now, when they turn 30, 35, they're gonna become looking for you and blaming you for why you ain't doing anything as a Gen Xer, right? The same way Gen Xers and whatnot blame boomers, somebody's gonna be blaming the Gen Xers for what they did not do. And these same people will sit on these panels and send emails and leave nasty comments in our live our videos and whatnot.
Hey, Mike.
Go ahead, brother.
I think Black people do complain about the situation here. So I don't know what type of Black people you're talking about. There are a lot. You see Black Lives Matter complain, calling Trump a racist, calling
What is
Trump
Black Lives
this
Matter?
and that.
Let's start with that. What is Black Lives Matter?
I mean, it's Black Lives Matter, right?
No. What exactly is its purpose?
Well, I mean, I'm not for Black Lives Matter.
I'm not saying
I'm not for Black Lives Matter at all.
Asking, what is the purpose of the organization? If it is an organization.
It talks. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know. Well, they claim to be for, fighting for Black lives and justice and criminal justice and all this and that. But I think it's a group just mainly run by a bunch of homosexuals and lesbians.
Oh, brother, please, you can't use that language on here.
Oh, okay. I apologize. But I mean, that's my view on Black Lives Matter.
But that's kind of like my point, right? Everything is reactionary for them here, right? It's always reactionary. It's never putting pressure on those who should have been put pressure on. And so when we talk about climate change in the Black community, most Black communities are 10 degrees hotter than their white counterparts. But why though? Why is it no? Why not have a deeper conversation about that than to be worried about whether or not Nigeria has clean running water? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why not talk about how COVID-19 could impact Black people in these probably Black cities because of the lack of housing for most Black people, right? Most Black people, you know, live on top of each other. And so the idea of contracting this pandemic or multiplying this pandemic is very much a reality. But see, those conversations are not being had on those channels. Only thing these people want to come here and talk about is whether or not Africa's a shithole, Haiti's a shithole, go back to your own country. What kind of conversation can you have with these people? While they wrap themselves in the American flag like it's a blanket or something. It's crazy. Oh, so I see somebody's trying to get on.
Did the other guy, the dude that was from Africa, did you already leave?
Who's that?
The guy that was from Africa.
Oh,
was
I'm
saying,
here. I'm here. My bad. I was just.
So do you think?
I'm here.
So you said that you've seen a lot of success because of America. You don't think you could have succeeded in the African country you came from?
I don't think so.
Why is that?
Because I mean, let me tell you a story about me. My mom was a statistician, and she had a PhD, but she couldn't get a job back. She could not get a job back in Africa.
Mhm.
Why? Because there was a lot of nepotism, you know, and that was one of the main reasons, and a lot of tribalism, and you know, she couldn't get a good job, and she was lucky enough to get a scholarship to come here to University of Kentucky, and you know, they sponsored her on a merit visa, and you know, that's how we, you know, got the opportunity to get here.
But see, and I don't mean to discredit you or anything like that. The nepotism that you're speaking of over there, we have racism over here that keeps a lot of Black people from advancing, right?
I wanted to know, well, do you agree with that? Do you feel the racism or see it? That's what I wanted to kind of know.
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Nah, I've never experienced racism here. I've never experienced. I mean, maybe some people did, but I haven't. And I'm Black as Black. I came in when I was 5 years old. I'm almost 30 years old now.
Mm-hmm. How do you define racism?
That's another subjective point. You know, people see race. People think everything's racism. You know, some people have a different definition for racism. So it depends on the person you ask. For me, I don't know what racism is because I've never experienced it.
Okay, so the updated, ignorant, common definition of racism is hating someone based on race. The original term it described a phenomenon, which is basically King would tell you. He said it's prejudice plus power. Mm-hmm. So if I don't like you because of the color of your skin, that doesn't really matter, right? I could not like a Mexican guy. I could not like a person because they're short, whatever. But when white people run an entire system and white people don't like Black people systematically, and we have to go to them for jobs, they control our water. They have a majority of the money. They run the entire system. When they have biases about you or they want to keep things white, it affects you because you don't have as much power in the system as they have. You understand what I'm saying? So you could just look systematically. You could see your schools have a lot less resources. The media is slanted in a way because they control all the images you see. It's slanted in a way that provides multiple different types of images for them, but all you see is us is like hustlers and pimps and gangbangers. Mm-hmm. you know, there's a many different factors. This is systematic. So for you to say that you haven't experienced racism just means that you don't know what racism is. Most people think that experiencing racism is like being called a nigger, right? But it's not, it's deeper than that. So with the explanation and the definition that I gave of racism, do you think that type of racism exists, or do you not see that either?
I don't see that either. I mean, I don't think I'll be able to convince you in this one because trust me, I've tried it before.
Well, I'm not gonna argue. I just want to know like what you think.
Think about what?
No, that what I'm saying. I'm not trying to debate you. I just want to know what you think. That's all.
Think about what exactly?
No, I asked you if you see that, or if you feel that that exists, or if you see it. I can't argue with your opinion. If you don't see it,
no, I don't feel anything, and I don't see that. I don't see it at all. I mean, I see people who, you know, people disagree, people agree, people throw each other under the bus, you know, just basic human behavior, you know. But I don't know what I really don't know what racism is.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to Mr. G. He has his hand up.
Hey, what's up, fellas? Good evening. Yeah, you see how the brother was just trying to, I guess, play the devil's advocate in regards to the narratives from ADOS/FBA, whatever you want to call them. But at the same time, he was somewhat short-sighted as to how racism really works, as far as, you know, structural racism, systematic racism. And I think it's part of the problem, right? With the tension between ADOS/FBA folks with their narratives and against, you know, quote unquote black immigrants, because a lot of the times, like, we don't really understand some of the stuff they go through or whatnot. And now what happened is they come here, they sort of imitate the same system as white folks do, as far as, you know, ADOS, you know, where, you know, they're resentful towards that successful black person, right? You know, they would say, oh, that's because you went to Harvard, you didn't go through the regular process, blah blah blah. And I've had ADOS people throw the same narrative at me as a quote unquote black immigrant, saying, oh, you went to the military. When you went to the military, they lowered the standard for you. That's how you were able to get in the military, blah blah blah. I'm like, I was shocked. I was shocked to hear that from a black person, right? And they ADOS, they take on some of the same narrative and they applying it to quote unquote black immigrants. But at the same time, black immigrants sometimes when they come here, what they understand to be racism or whatnot, they understand it from a very like binary standpoint. They don't understand the systematic, the
nuances,
the gray.
The nuances.
It's an education issue, man. Because this is the thing. I could very easily. You didn't mention the country you're from, but like someone could go there and say, like I could ask you, would you mind saying what country you're from? Or you want to keep that? Yeah.
Oh, I'm Haitian, bro.
Oh, okay. No. I was referring to. It doesn't matter the country he's from, but basically my point is, you could say there's nepotism there, but I guarantee you, I could point to some white corporations who are successful there. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, wait a minute. If there's nepotism and you can't succeed, why are these white people here succeeding? Why are these German companies running your power, or you know, getting contracts and you know what I mean? But if you don't know any better, you'll just look at it and say, I don't know. As far as I can see, immigrants come here, people succeed all the time. So you could do it too. But you have to be educated on how exactly that nepotism and this favoritism system works and the corruption of the system to understand that problem. But if your worldview is, for me as an individual, I can succeed better in America than I could relative to what I came from, right? If that's your worldview, you're locked into where you came from as the bar. So you're not looking at the discrimination that you're facing and the disparities that you have in America. It's a worldview issue.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Triz. I think he has his hand up.
Hey, what's going on, Mike? What's going on, everybody on the panel?
Chill, bro.
The individual that was that spoke of, that actually took the time to define in his own words what racism is. There's something very crucial about that statement in his definition, where he mentioned power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the reason why you have a lot of individuals who deny the existence of racism, because to acknowledge the existence of racism is to admit that another group has power over you. And so it's like it's almost like a complex, and it's a statement of weakness to say, to acknowledge the existence of racism. And for some people may not necessarily have had the same experiences as other people.
Mm-hmm.
If you maybe because of who you are, maybe the environment that you're in, you're accepted by the greater populace.
Mm-hmm.
And so you lack empathy for those that aren't accepted, even those that are capable and productive, but because of the environment that they're in, or the people's perception of them, for whatever reason, maybe the way they talk, maybe the way they dress, maybe they have a more ethnic, an ethnic appearance. Some may feel that they're intimidating, but for whatever reason, they have a different experience as far as racism. And just because you don't experience it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Personally,
Hey, Super Trish, sorry to cut you off. Can you just say that one more time? Something you said about power and people's perception about racism. Can you say that one more time?
Well, because the actual the way the individual, was that you that defined racism? Was that you?
No, I didn't define racism. No,
Oh, the individual that defined
Mufasa.
racism.
That was Mufasa. That was me.
Okay, so the individual that defined Mufasa, that defined racism, specifically mentioned power. There's a specific power dynamic that really defines racism. So it goes beyond the actual sentiment, but your ability to exercise authority over another group that you're biased towards. And so because of that element, to admit racism exists, it admits that you're not in a position of power. It admits that you have you're in essence, you're at the will of another group. And so for a lot of people, that's hard to come to terms with. And furthermore, everybody has a different experience. Somebody who, for whatever reason, depending on their situation, may not experience the level of racism that somebody else does. But that's not to say that because I don't experience the level of racism that somebody else doesn't negate their experience, doesn't mean that I will disavow the existence of racism. Because I know personally where I work at, I don't really experience a lot of racism. Personally.
Overt,
there you go, overt racism. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I know that it's there. And I think that the thing that we have to do is we have to kind of, even though we have a unique experience, let's try to look at the situation outside the box and really evaluate it from a higher vantage point, so you can really see what's going on, all the nuances, and then make a statement based on not just our personal experience, but what we think the experience is for the group as a whole. And but going back to the issue about Africa, and I'm gonna close that on this. I just want to ask, ourselves, as a collective, how did we get to this point in America where we can look at another country and kind of hold our nose up and saying, and talk about that other country's shortcomings? Now, disregarding the fact that we have shortcomings here, but we have to understand that we got here because of shortcuts that were taken, injustices that were done. people, groups of people that were exploited. That's how we were able to fast track our industrialization here in the United States. Mm-hmm. Because if we take a look at, let's just take a look at a country, because there's an individual that I talk with on a regular basis from Bosnia. Mm-hmm. That country didn't benefit from colonialism to the degree that, say, for instance, the United States did. Mm-hmm. And you look at their country, and by the definition of shithole country that has been echoed mm-hmm. by our leader, quote unquote, Bosnia, which is a Caucasian country, will be defined as a shithole country.
It is.
But because they didn't have the advantages mm-hmm. of colonialism like the United States did, they're in the position that they're in. So when we look at Africa, right, they we have to understand that we can't denounce the injustices that we endured as a collective, but then big up the actual the result of that injustice, mm-hmm. because that's essentially what we're doing.
Well, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, because you moved on to another thing, I wanted to ask you, do you oppose my definition of racism? And so what is your definition? Because you
No, I wasn't opposing your definition of racism. I was highlighting the fact that you mentioned the power dynamic in so many words. And I think that's why a lot of people shy away from admitting racism, because in essence, you have to admit that there is a power disparity and that you are on the short end of the stick.
So after you work in corporate America,
I work in a hospital.
In a hospital, and you don't feel the power imbalance between blacks and white, it doesn't impact you in your job at all? Mm-hmm. So why would you say you haven't experienced racism?
No, I said I haven't experienced racism to the degree that some other people do.
It means the over experience of confrontation.
See, so what I mean is that I don't just because I don't experience racism to the degree that other people do doesn't mean that I will deny that it exists. I know it exists, mm-hmm. but I just happen to be fortunate enough to not have to experience it so overtly like some other people do.
I don't know. I have an issue with the statement that I don't experience racism I don't know if anybody's experiencing any less or more, because it's like this, right? Let's say I'm a business owner, I'm a smart dude, I can get through it, I can solve problems, I'm very intelligent, and I'm still able to make $2 million a year, right? Because of the extra obstacles I have to go through due to racism, I should really be making way more. You know what I mean? So that doesn't mean I escape racism just because I was able to go through all the extra obstacles that it presents. You know?
And it impacts people differently, right? If you look at Republican Tim Scott, right, he stood on Capitol Hill after Philando Castile was pulled over and killed and said, "Hey, I go through getting pulled over and stopped and frisked and all that stuff." This is a high-ranking politician, man. How is this possible? Yeah. Right? You had 2009. You had Dr. Skip Gates in Cambridge, Massachusetts, world-renowned professor, Harvard University, Eminent, get stopped and frisked in his own house, man, get dragged out and get arrested. How is this possible? And then Obama,
the dude knew the fucking president, bro.
He's friends with the president. You have the president of the United States, the most highest ranking position, demand an apology from this white police officer. He says, "No, fuck you, I'm not gonna apologize." In the White House. So it doesn't matter what your position is and how much education you have and this and that. There is a obvious imbalance in power that Mufasa highlighted of how white people engage Black people.
And also, Mike, I don't mean to be rude and interrupt you like that, but I just want to highlight what you were talking about with Obama, because I remember that very clearly. Originally, when Obama lashed out, he had you could say a natural knee-jerk reaction of being a Black man seeing something like that. And I think, like you said, I believe he demanded an apology. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Obama referred to the officer like as a dumbass, if I remember correctly.
He said he acted stupidly.
Yeah. Oh, he acted stupidly.
To take a man out when he knew it was his house.
And okay, perfect. And my point is this: Obama had to walk all that back, all the way to the point to where you remember he had that officer at the White House lawn and had a beer with him, and they made a whole spectacle out of it. That goes to show you that power imbalance.
Yeah.
And this man is the president. He's the president, and he had to walk it back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, white people. I didn't really mean it like that."
And you know something? That point you bring up a good one, because Obama looked at that, and I remember he and Axelrod, those guys after, they sat down and thought that was one of the biggest faux pas that they made.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that was a big mistake at the end of the day. They were like, oh man, that didn't go over well.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't go over well.
Mm-hmm.
Some white police officer, I ain't vote for him. I didn't vote for Obama. No, I ain't apologize. I mean, disrespect coming out of these savages. Yeah. The president, he did try to walk that back, and it made him look bad.
Oh yeah, he walked it all the way back.
Here's something. He said he thought that was somewhat of a public relations disaster for him. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it.
Yeah, but so that's, Nicole, you're just coming on, but basically the purpose of this live stream impromptu was because your boy, man, sent me some emails earlier and said that, I was a coward. I basically had cold feet, and I didn't want to debate such and such person over, this Atos versus Pan-Africanism and stuff like that. I don't have any interest in debating people who don't want to see the liberation of Black people on a global scale, man. Nothing to talk about.
Nah, I totally agree. You have these people who want to separate Atos from everything else like that, and they want to sit down and say, well, Pan-Africanism is bullshit and everything else like that. When you started to look at the movement in the 60s, you started to look at that, okay, especially with civil rights and all that, that was a international type of a movement, which also played a very key role in helping to free up a lot of African nations. That did work in many respects hand in hand, but a lot of people don't make those connections. All right. So these things do work very closely together, but you have people here who are xenophobic. They think Africans are against them and everything else like that. And they've got all these different views, and that's what you're dealing with. I mean, to sit down and have to debate somebody on this is actually kind of insane. But that's the level of thinking that you have out here as of right now. And racism is all over. So, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And, so I want to bring up this famous picture of this white woman, Jan Brewer, pointing her finger in Obama's face. How, you would never see that in Russia. No one would ever point their finger in Putin's face. That this doesn't happen like that.
It doesn't happen to any president for that matter, except for Obama.
I remember that incident there, and I was like, I wish I was Obama's security, because I would have grabbed her finger and I would have shoved it up her big white funky ass and said, "Oh shit, you tried to attack him." I would have came in there with something crazy, but I would have hurt her for doing
All
that.
right.
All right.
Can I play the devil's advocate here?
And one last thing. Who remembers?
And hold on a second. I just want to say this. And at the end of the day, Brewer ended up saying, "Well, I apologize for that. I shouldn't have done that." She ended up apologizing for that. But the fact of the matter that she could walk up, here is a subordinate politician walking up to the president and wagging her finger at her like he's a kid, like he's a boy, was crazy. It was the same one where you had that senator from South Carolina who sat down and said, "You lie!" Screamed out.
I was just going to say that, and I think that was the State of the Union.
Lie right around the floor. Where quite frankly, all right, in the past, if somebody did that, they would have been censured. They might have even lost their office, but they would have been censured. This individual ended up raising millions of dollars, off of that.
Hey, Nagone, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me play the devil's advocate here, right? What do you have to say about the level of disrespect that Donald Trump faces every day?
About what? I'm sorry, you broke up the keyboard. I'm sorry.
What do you have to say about the level of disrespect that Donald Trump faces every day?
Yeah,
well, Donald Trump deserves a lot of it. He
brought on himself.
He deserves a lot of it. Okay, he deserves a lot of it. Okay, Donald Trump sat back and he ran one of the most divisive campaigns I've ever seen. He separated people, told people how they were this and they were that. He was the one talking about shithole countries and all this kind of crapola. Had Steve Bannon and all them utilizing the divisive nature of his of his campaign to actually win. Now remember, this guy only got 46% of the vote. Okay, he didn't come in here.
My point is this is all political. I mean, it's
well, you want to say political, but there's a lot of this stuff is racial.
Yeah, this is very
because
racial.
a lot of the because a lot of the reaction to Obama was racial. And not to say that most people were, but you had a very loud, very savage right wing who really made a lot of noise, calling this man a monkey and everything else like that. I don't know if you saw some of the memes that these people were putting out there on the president. I don't think you saw a lot of that kind of stuff. Okay, a lot of people get on Trump because they feel he's incompetent and he's a divisive figure. But people got down on Obama because he was black, because of what and the people that he represented. That was a big problem, and that created the Tea Party and some of these other motions that you have there, to literally where that reaction was so vitriolic and so and so visceral. This is what you've got. That's why you've got Donald Trump in here, where you have people who backed him up, like people of David Duke and these other people. Klans people, rolling through here talking about, yeah, we support this president. He represents us. Make America great again and all this kind of stuff. What's this make America great? Make America great again. Get these niggas out of here. Pretty much. I mean, this is what you're really dealing with. This is the reaction that you're having. So,
and you could even look at the fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Donald Trump has what, 2 baby mamas, if I'm not wrong.
No, he has multiple. He has kids we don't even know.
Listen.
About.
Okay, so but as far as the
baby
though,
mamas, I think with his wife, I think he has, with her ass out, and but we picture of her ass out when she was out there. Think about it.
But he has either 2 or 3 baby mamas. That's like official that we know about.
Yeah.
You can't even fathom Barack Obama running for president with 2, 3 baby mamas.
Yeah, remember when that black woman was running around the Capitol Hill in that that Nissan G35, that coupe, and they shot it up and they said, "Oh, that's Obama's baby mama coming into the White House trying to get in there." Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
I remember that.
They lit the car up, man, with the baby in the back seat. They showed no regards, man. They could have hit that baby and they didn't care. They lit that car up with about 30 rounds.
Sure did.
So when we talk about this imbalance, and I want to make sure we get to Driz because he did raise his hand. We talk about this sort of imbalance, of global outlook. These people who want to wrap themselves in American flags, MAGA hats, or whatever you call you, DNC, whatever it is, point the finger at Africans and say, "Oh, you live in shithole countries." You take the same perspective of a white supremacist, but then you turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to the own inequalities in your own country, and you want to have a conversation with the Black Brain Trust about what? About what? What can we talk about?
I think this guy wants to sell a product. But anyway, I'm sorry, Super Trish, go ahead, bro.
No, this is going to be real quick, Nagon, and you can jump right back in. I just want to say, my question, this is a question that I've asked since the first time I actually stepped into this particular sector of YouTube, because you have these debates, and what happens is that there's divisiveness even amongst the quote unquote community. And then they further divided by people who are indigenous, people who were born here or who have had several generations here, to people who immigrated or family might have immigrated. But, the question you have to ask is, how do you define Black? Because a lot of the arguments that I hear from opposition based on Blackness has yet to actually be defined. Because some of the arguments that I hear is that, people that are mixed are not Black, or, once you decide to date somebody from outside of the community, you're no longer considered Black, or if you are Black, you have a diminished voice, or if you have a voice at all. And when we look at our actual history, for those of us that are quote unquote indigenous to this land, you'll find that some of our ancestors may not necessarily look like us. And that may be voluntary or involuntary in nature.
One drop of Black blood made you Black.
So
one drop. That's America.
Well, but then you have people who actually oppose that. And but then if we're going by that, wouldn't that make somebody who is actually from the continent more black than I am? Because somebody from the continent probably has a higher percentage of quote unquote African blood.
Yeah,
So
that's why we don't.
Start having,
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. When we start having these conversations, let's first define. I'm not directing this necessarily anybody in this panel, but the person that wants to debate might be, you know, put that in stone. Like nobody wants to say that and stand on it because they want to be able to move the goalposts. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because it's not about necessarily like me as far as I have a concern about who's defined as black and who's not. That's not really my concern. My concern is people who have opposition to certain perspectives. They don't want to define blackness because they want to be able to move the goalposts at their leisure. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Hey, Mr. G got his hand up.
Yeah, let's go to Renaissance. Let's go to Renaissance because his hand up before Mr. G. He took his hand down, I think. Renaissance.
Yeah, this whole conversation sort of sums up the kind of trouble that black people, and I say black people, I mean globally all black people, whether you're ADOS or a black immigrant, the kind of trouble we're in because we have some of us that refuse to believe, that refuse to accept the Americanness in any of us. It's this thing where Trump, whose grandparent came from Germany. I'm not sure if his dad. I think his dad was born here.
Scotland, I think.
Yeah, no. His mother was from Ireland. She was Irish.
Yeah. Well, his dad is from Germany.
Yeah.
Or his grandfather, I think.
His grandfather called Drumpf, Drumpf.
From Germany. So these people are only like three generations in this country, and you can accept their Americanness, but if Roland Martin is like 6th, 7th generation, Angela Rye, if she's like 6th, 7th generation American, you always gotta say, is she? Whoa, let's check. Is she a DOS? Is she a DOS? Like what the fuck? So you can accept Trump to be your president. He's fully American. So when the white people are telling you to go back to Africa, you accept that. You know why you accept that? Because Roland Martin is not an ADOS or an American to you, but Trump is an American to you. So that means you to yourself is not an American like the white people are telling you.
Yeah,
Do you get it? Do you guys get it?
Yeah, we get it.
These people that just came from here the other day. If somebody moved from Germany, they have a white kid here, the same ADOS person will refer to that little boy as an American. But if somebody came from Nigeria or Haiti and they have their kids here, that same kid, you'll refer to them as an immigrant. So in your subconscious mind, white belongs to America. White is America. Black is not America. That's what you're saying. So you are reinforcing the racism that white people, when they tell you to go back to Africa, you're pretty much reinforcing that. Because if it was across the board, you were being fair with your discrimination, Trump should be an immigrant to you. Because you got black Americans or children of Africans who literally got their blood in the soil. White people still telling them to go back to Africa. But you got your brother that look just like you, black just like you. They pay their taxes just like you. They are invested in the system just like you. But you don't want to accept them as American just like you. But this other person, because they're white, and they just got here the other day, you can accept their kids as American. You don't see how stupid that is?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of social and political confusion amongst, the hashtag. Because I don't have anything against those who want to run behind the hashtag. I have nothing against them. I'm just making this point that they seem to be the loudest voices in the room against Pan-Africanism. But then when you ask them, well, what's the game plan here? They have nothing, or it's crickets. And it's like, well, what kind of conversation do you think you're going to have? I mean, I keep going back to this American flag being wrapped around like a drape, but that's what this person was showing. All these videos of Black Americans running around with American flags and Star Spangled Banner. It's just ridiculous to me. At some point, it just becomes an avatar, for house Negroes. And I don't want, this person to think that, oh, well, you're just attacking us because if you hate, this person told me in the email, well, if you hate us if you hate it here so much, then why don't you go back to your own country? I said, what type of conversation do you think you're gonna have with me? At that point, that's when I went live. I said, I'm not gonna let you disrespect me in these emails thinking that, well, you can pull up articles about Africa and the lack of running water because one person says so, or fourth industrialization because one IT person says so. It's stupid, man. At what point?
You know what?
Go ahead.
I call these guys, I call some of these people the black crackers. They are the black crackers. They want to be the black superior class. A lot of these people who have nothing going on for themselves, they see that person with the Nigerian name with that big ass, with that big chemistry degree, PhD, and they're hating on them. So now the only way they can feel superior, just like the poor white trash who see the black doctor and they don't have nothing for themselves, the only way they can feel superior to that black doctor is to up that whiteness. So the only way for some of these DOS, FBA people who ain't got shit going for themselves when they see that Nigerian PhD student is for them to put their citizenship against them and be like, oh, I'm the black white. I'm the black white. I'm the black white. Out of the black groups, we are the superior black. I call them the black crackers.
Let's go to Man Friday.
All right, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, salute to the panel. Interesting discussion. I'm glad to be on here. I used to rock with the ADOS ideology when it came to reparations, because that's how it kind of came to light about a year ago or something. And a few people was talking about it. I think Yvette Carnell, Tariq Nasheed, Jason Black, and I'm like, yeah, if you're talking about reparations for the American government, then you have to, to make a legal claim, you have to, show yourself to be, the descendants of American slaves. I was fully 100% behind it, and I saluted it. But what happened is, since that time, it seems like it's kind of morphed into this separate class of, I don't know what to say, maybe Pan-Africanists, whereby they kind of like consider themselves to be super black, and I find that problematic.
Well, can I speak to that for a second?
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry to
please.
cut you off. I don't mean to be rude. I want to take a moment for you and for the brother that was speaking earlier that was very passionate, I'll say, very passionate.
Mr.
I want to
G,
take it. Was that Mr. G?
Yes,
I think
yes,
so.
sir.
Oh, okay, cool. What I wanted to bring, I kind of want to take a moment to defend the hashtaggers, right? Because the ADOS FBA, because I understand the sentiment, and I come out of that world. I'll start off by saying this much, right? I'm Haitian, right? I was born and raised in the United States. I'm from Chicago. My parents are from Haiti, right? One thing and you can feel free to disagree with me, anybody, if they want to on this.
Oh, you're an immigrant, right? You're an immigrant.
No. Hold just a
According
second.
to them, you're an immigrant, bro.
Yeah,
I know.
but Mr. G,
No.
let him-
Hold on.
let him finish.
I know that already. Just hear me out. The reason on my YouTube channel, when I speak out on behalf of ADOS FBA, that I don't receive any type of backlash, despite the fact that I'm considered an immigrant, is because I understand the sentiment from which they come from. I say that to say this: number one, when people come here, Black foreigners, Haitians, I'll speak for my family, right? Because I know some other people will want to disagree.
Can you? Yeah,
I'll speak for my family. When I say Haitians, I'm just speaking for my family.
Speed it up
Huh?
a little bit, please.
What?
I hear what you're saying, but can you be a bit more succinct, because I was in the middle of something as well.
Oh, okay. Basically, let me just try to go through this. I understand the sentiment of ADOS FBA, all right, as it pertains to how it looks as if a lot of ADOS FBA and that whole movement for reparations has turned into a kind of a xenophobic kind of movement where we're the true Americans and we're better than everybody else. Number one, me being a immigrant, you can say, technically I'm not, but I understand that I'm looked at as one. I know for a fact that when black foreigners come to the United States, I understand that they're not coming here to fight white supremacy. If you're coming here from Haiti, Jamaica, Nigeria, whatever, you didn't come here for all of that. So when ADOS gets in contact with these individuals throughout the years and the decades, you're expecting, because you understand that they are here in the US because of white supremacy, that they'll jump on board with you to fight that here. And they didn't come here for that. They came here just to work and get in where they fit in. So that's where that negative sentiment comes into place, because these ADOS FBA people here are looking at you like, yo, bro, like your country is messed up because of
Okay,
this white supremacy
let
stuff.
me
How are you going to come here and not link up? And I also want to say this, and feel free to disagree with me. When black foreigners come here, and I'm speaking from my upbringing because my parents and almost all of my family that's here is from Haiti. I believe that we're lying to ourselves to a degree if we pretend as if the black foreigners that do come to the US don't come here already with the preconceived notion of negativity towards ADOS FBA. They come here with their noses up high, looking down on them when they get here. I'm telling you from what I experienced, from all those that were around me, as well as other friends of mine who their parents were from the continent. They looked down on ADOS FBA crazy. And now we're at a moment in time to where you see ADOS FBA saying, all right, well, you know what? Bump that. You know, if that's how you guys feel, that's how you feel. Now, the one mistake of ADOS is, and I'll be quiet here, is that we project that onto the continent as a whole and to the Caribbeans as a whole, as if the entire African diaspora views us in that light, or views ADOS FBA in that light. And that's not the case. From what Mike V has talked about, it's actually the opposite. But as far as when it concerns to black foreigners coming here to the US, they're not coming here to be revolutionaries. They're not here for that. They're here to just work,
Well,
get in where they fit in. And if you come to them with that foolishness or what they feel to be as foolishness, they're gonna look at you crazy. And they
you
already
make
had
some
negative
valid
sentiment
points.
on. Go
But
ahead,
no, I
I'm done.
agree with.
Let's go to Man Friday, where he hasn't finished his point.
Listen, yeah, let me have a chance. You spoke for a long time, bro. You know what I'm
Go
saying?
ahead, go
And
ahead.
yeah. So essentially, what I was saying is that, you know, the ADOS thing, when it came to reparations, it had validity. Okay, it had a valid argument, it had a legitimate legal argument, and I was watching that. That's the reason why, you know what I mean, I supported the ADOS thing. But after that now, it's taken a narrative whereby they consider other Pan-Africanists and other people from different parts of the world as being less black or even non-black. That's erroneous. That's wholly erroneous. Just because somebody has coons coming from whichever part of the world you want, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's Jamaica, whichever, or where I'm from in the UK. Everywhere has its coons, okay? But that doesn't mean that because everybody comes in there is not a Pan-Africanist, that the Pan-Africanists in those countries are less legitimate than ADOS. That's not true. Another narrative which I found them talking about, which I disagree with, is that, you know, Pan-Africanism started in the Americas. That's not true either. You know, and there's something I hear spoken around a lot in these YouTube streets, as they say. You know, and from my observations, the Pan-African Congress and Pan-African Conference started by people from Trinidad and Barbados in the UK. Okay, and then afterwards, other people from the States came over to the second or the third Congress. But if you hear ADOS talk about it, it's like no one else matters. This is our thing, and we've been doing this thing. It's like, you know, I appreciate what you've been doing, and I appreciate, you know, I mean, what you've brought to the world. But but stick to the script of truth. Don't be, putting additives in your argument, and don't be, adulterating the thing, because it's not really that. That's what I have a problem with when they start adulterating and making out that people from other parts of the world, whether they be African, that they're all useless and no worth. That's not the case. They're not. It's not whole coons in Trinidad, or it's not whole.
But see, this is the issue with that though, because for lack of a better term, I don't know how else to put it, but like if you're okay, so when you leave Haiti or wherever it is that you come from, you get down and you ask America to give you the opportunity to come here, you're accepting America when you do that. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not saying every single person is a coon, but they're saying, I see them niggas on the street. I see what you're doing to black. I see the discrimination, whatever. And I'm not saying everyone sees it, right? But you're accepting everything that America is, and then you want to come in anyway. It's like you're already some form of a coon for that move. Now, we know they don't do it to be coons, so they're not coons. But I'm hoping y'all, for the lack of a better term, are seeing what I'm saying. Because like the brother said, you didn't come here to be no damn revolutionary. How can you beg somebody to come in?
That's not the point. That's not the point, though, bro.
Become a revolutionary,
because the majority of Black Americans do not want to be revolutionaries either. ADOS is not a majority in Black America. That's a fact. Like, there's not Pan-Africanism is maybe 5% of Blacks. So that's the same worldwide. So if you see people coming from other parts of the world, you can't expect them to have a higher percentage of Pan-Africanists than you do in your own country. That's ridiculous.
No, but see, I agree with everything the Haitian brother said. That's where I agree. One thing I agree with them on, the ADOS, it shouldn't be them because they screwed it up. But as brothers, we do need to say something to some of these people, like the brother that was on the platform earlier. We have to have some type of way where we not saying like, oh, we're gonna throw y'all away, y'all ain't black, but as brothers coming from other places saying there's no racism here, we got to have a discussion about that, because that's unacceptable.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
It's got to be checked. It's got to be checked for whichever country you're from. I mean, I'm from the UK. My parents are from the Caribbean. I'm currently talking to you from Barbados. I've been for the last 2 weeks.
Or were you in Brisbane?
I'm in Christchurch. That's my mother's from Christchurch. I'm in Christchurch right now. I'm sitting out this coronavirus thing over here.
Yeah, it's a country mouse. Country mouse.
But the point go ahead.
Go ahead, man, Friday.
No, the point I was. Oh, go ahead, bro.
No, please go ahead.
The point I was making was that I agree with everything the Haitian brother said up to the reason for. See, the reasoning for it is where the reason ADOS lost things because it was never about trying to solve a problem. It's about competition between being white and being American. That's what it's about. So you have the person who comes here. There's immigrants who come here for self gain and self benefit. Then there's immigrants who come here who want to be Americans. They believe in everything and they want to compete in this system and bow down to white people and accept it and become one of them. And we have black people who bow down to white people and accept it and want to be them. And they see competition from these other black groups. That's where your clash is. And that's a large percentage of those immigrants, and that's a large percentage of black people that's here. But the Pan-Africanists who have pride and want to build our own thing, those are the people who are the immigrants that are gonna come here and use it to build home. Those of us that are here and trying to find home. Those is two different groups. That's why we, the real Pan-Africanists, can't mix with the ADOS crowd, because they're competing with people over white resources. That's what it's about.
Well, I don't believe that. Oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody have their hand raised?
There's two people with their hands raised. I need to go to Renaissance first. Let's go to Renaissance.
Okay, go ahead.
Renaissance, can you hear us?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, put some volume on your mic, brother.
Okay, can y'all hear me now better?
Yes, sir.
No, I only had two things I wanted to say. One was kind of directed towards Tony. He was saying he comes out of the I guess FBA / ADOS ideology, and just to me, my question with them has always been, don't they think they're making a strategic error? Because in my mind, I don't see and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see how Black people in America have accomplished anything massive without international support in this country, specifically African support, be it civil rights movement, the American Revolution, granted not so much African pressure there, but international, or even just like little things throughout history, like the death of Emmett Till. I was reading a book and they were talking about, you had Africans who found out about that and were pretty much asking the U.S. diplomat, about that incident. So that was my first question. And then I was just going to put a comment in discussion with the discussion about the African immigrants that come here. My experience with them is I have seen some that stayed, but I've seen several that have come here, got their education, and gone back to their country. So when people have this notion of, oh, these African immigrants come here and they look down on us, that hasn't been my experience. I just want to throw that in as well.
All right, so I'll answer your first question. And just plainly, yes, it is a strategic error. Unfortunately, on my YouTube channel, I'm not one of the brothers that gets 50,000 to 100,000 views per video. You know what I mean? I'll get 5,000 on a good video, 10,000. But I say that to say, I definitely clearly don't have the loudest mic. So, I express that, but it's not falling on as many ears as it would if I did Tariq Nasheed numbers. You know what I mean? So just to answer that question, it's absolutely a strategic error. Like I was saying, I understand where that sentiment comes from, right? That kind of what appears to has turned into an anti-Black foreigner. I get it. But at the same time, also, you are correct. It's a strategic error. It's
because I was going to say,
strategic error.
I don't even see us get, if reparations ever happened in America for Black people, I truly feel like you'd have to have a lot of international pressure to make it happen, not just here in this country.
Yeah, that's all.
That is exactly correct.
Yeah,
that's why you can't put hands on, and I want to make sure I state this. I don't advocate putting hands on anybody, Asians, Chinese. I don't advocate any of that stuff. I don't rock with that. If you put hands on somebody, you should be, just prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I want to make that plain. But with that being said, that's why you see when it comes to with this COVID-19 thing and, let's say discrimination and violence towards Chinese, you see a large pushback from it. Is because of the fact that China, I don't know what they would do, but I don't believe the country of China would just sit back and tolerate their people here being assaulted, violated, beaten, and killed. It's going to create a global issue. You know what I mean?
They would make a stink out of it. And rightfully so.
They will counter it. You will see retaliation in China against white Americans and stuff like that there.
Exactly. And to the point of that, we don't.
You might, but it would be an international incident, and the Chinese would make a big political statement out of this as well, which would be problematic for the United States. So it wouldn't so much violence because the Chinese understand, that could really blow up into something, but they would make a big international incident out of it, which would create a lot of problems for America. So that's something that would not be accepted. Like when we had a lot of Black people being shot around the country by these police and just coming out here being shot. There was much outcry, Europe, Middle East, and Africa over what was going on with respect to the shootings that were going on here in this country. People were looking at this nation as it was being uncivilized. This is just recently. So you would take a lot of heat for that. I mean, the United States was taking a lot of international heat and condemnation for those actions.
And the president of China, Xi Jinping, actually called out Obama before he left office, and on that, he said, "You have no right to talk about human rights violations in China when Black men are being shot down left and right in the street by your law enforcement."
Yeah, that's exactly correct, and made it look bad. It said, basically, why are you guys not stopping this? These people are savages. People in Ireland and so forth like that, we're having demonstrations about this.
In the United States, the United States government does not enforce its law enforcement to submit the deaths by law enforcement to the government, because the government would have to submit it to United Nations, which would put them at the top of police killings in the world by mass, and they don't want to do that. And so that's the way they cover it all up.
And then you'd be looking at a terrorist state. You're terrorizing your own citizens. And then, some of these people would actually be called to be charged damn near internationally on what they're doing. United States was looking bad on that. Looking real bad. They don't want to be killing Chinese citizens here. I wish the Chinese are being armed up. They've been arming up heavily because they are actually aware of that. So they've been selling guns over there, man. Like literally like fucking literally like egg drop soup and shit. They've been selling them guns like there's no tomorrow. They've been getting armed up. They're ready. So even though they're a small minority, they're not going to stand back and just let themselves get murdered by these Steve Bannon type savages and so forth that are roaming around looking to blame these people for it and kill them over it. So they have been arming up.
And I think it's important to point out too that that's well, I was going to say quickly. Oh, go ahead.
Hi. I'm just gonna say quickly, I don't think we should waste too much time speaking about like racism because it's not going to change anytime soon.
Hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. G.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that. The brother that was speaking earlier, that said he was born here. My only, I completely understand everything he was saying. My only thing with them is that this thing is extremely dynamic, and there's a few there's a little bit of nuance in there that I don't think he either forgot or probably doesn't understand. See, the thing is, a guy like me, I have seen the best of both worlds, right? I was born in Haiti, obviously. You guys can hear my accent. Sometimes the accent goes away. I talk like a real Southern nigga. Sometimes you can hear it. You're like, what? It depends how fast I'm speaking and how energized and excited I am about the topic. You guys probably can already tell that. So, as somebody who's actually, and not to say that he's not a real Haitian or anybody else like Mike, or they're not a real Haitian because they were born here, but as somebody who was born here, who had to come here, go to school, learn the English, coming here, looking different, being different. Let me tell you something, man. Especially when it comes to us, Haitian, we have a specific, a unique experience, completely unique experience. When you first get here, you're learning English, so many things, so many negative attributes are being put on the Haitians that even the kids who are born here with Haitian parents, like the brother I was speaking to, anybody else on the panel, these kids that were born here, the same kids, they wouldn't even fuck with you or translate for you while you watching the Spanish kids that just got here, the Cubans that were born here, they're cool with them, they're chilling with them, they're translating for them. That's because of that Haitianness. It's not until very recently that Haitian, being Haitian, it seem cool and accepted. You know why? Because you remember, both people, Haitian body order. You don't remember that. I'm from Florida. I'm a Florida nigga. I don't know where he grew up. He said Chicago, Philly, or whatever. I don't know what was happening in these parts. But ask anybody from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, or probably New York. Haitian body order. Haitian eat cats. All of these things. You know who are saying these things to Haitians? It was the African Americans. Now it's not all of them. We need to stay away from generalization. We need to stay away from generalization. It's really important that we stay away from generalizations, but we can't act like we got there just overnight, like nothing ever happened. There has been consistent history. This whole thing, this conversation, really and truly, is not really anything new. These are issues that's been there for a very, very, very long time, and I think, due to the history of what has happened in the recent past, in the 1990s and probably early 2000s, of how they view whether it was Haitians or Africans or whatever, and now, and how we have positioned ourselves, how we're making moves, people kind of feel some kind of way about that. People kind of feel some kind of way about that. Like, Haitians have never been welcome here. By who? African Americans.
I just want to,
Yes, sir.
I want to answer that. I want to answer that very briefly.
Oh, you can go ahead and answer that. I'll finish up after that.
Okay, and I'll make it very briefly. I'll put it to you like this for the most part. I understand where you're coming from. In Chicago, there isn't as large as a Haitian population. There's a large Haitian population there, but not like it is in Miami or in Florida in general. So I would assume your experience clearly is going to be a lot different as far as the negative aspects of it. And I'll just go on and say this much, and then I'll be quiet. Is that growing up, um, I experienced exactly the same thing that you're talking about. Now, I never heard anything about Haitian body odor. That might be something unique to Florida. But the kids at my school, the kids at my school, you know, they knew my mother's accent and whatnot. You know what I mean? Like they knew that my
Yeah,
parents were from
yeah,
here. You know, and
yeah,
by default, with that alongside, we'll say with my last name or whatever. And then my dad used to cut my hair, and you know, he never give me no
yeah,
lining.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like I'd never have a lining. My point is that they were getting on me all the time, you know, and they didn't even know that my parents were Haitian. You know, I was just getting the whole African booty scratcher kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like they were just getting at me,
You don't
you
speak
know.
Creole, Tony?
But uh-huh.
You don't speak Creole?
I speak it. I'll put it to you like this. I know survival Creole. You drop me off in Haiti, I'm good. But if you just want me to just go like full on back and forth, I'm gonna lose you. You know what I mean? I understand it. You know, I understand it. But when it comes to speaking it, I can get around. If you drop me off in Haiti, I'll be cool. But if you like a full on conversation like what we having now, no, no.
Yeah.
But my point is that also I just never, and maybe that's where, and I'm not going to say, I think that's Mr. G, that you've taken it to heart. But for me, growing up, I just never took it to heart. Like I've noticed a lot of other black foreigners, I'm just generalizing when I say that. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter where you come from, but I've noticed black foreigners that actually come here from another country, a lot of them take that to heart. You know what I mean? That
yeah.
kind of name calling and getting picked on by other what we'll call African Americans. I just never took that to heart, and I guess
and
that's
and
why
and,
I'm
and
kind of
and
the
you
way
you
that I
know
am.
what?
You know?
I'm not even taking it to a heart like that. It's just when I do talk with a passion and whatnot. But obviously, I'm a 35-year-old man. I mean, I'm over that stuff. But we have a history, just like it's important when Africans or black immigrants come here, they understand the history of African Americans and everything they've been through. It's very important, and that's why. And this is why one of the reasons we're having this conversation. And I'll say this, right? You know Wyclef Jean, right? You
Yes.
know Wyclef Jean?
Yes.
A lot of people, it's not until recently a lot of people have come and realized, even though Wyclef was always performing with his Haitian flag and things of that nature, they looked so low down on the Haitian that many people refuse to believe that Wyclef was Haitian. Every time somebody is trying to make a negative comparison, or if they see somebody be like, oh, like the Haitian look, if it's like an ugly person, like, but they don't know that Garcelle Bove on Jenny Fox show is Haitian.
Yes.
Garcelle Bove on Jenny Fox show is Haitian. People be like, oh, you don't look Haitian. What the fuck does that supposed to mean? That's because they have this negative, this down low thing. They look down on you. You're supposed to look a certain way. You're supposed to be a certain thing. You know what I'm saying? And I'll say this to finish. First of all, black immigrants are the biggest supporters of reparations, especially us Haitians. I will never, I will walk all throughout America. I could never find a Haitian that's against reparations. I don't know about other group, but I speak for me and my group. I know none of us are against reparation. And I hate how they try to bundle their xenophobic feelings with us, with the narrative that we might be against reparation. We're not against reparation. We are the biggest supporter of reparation. You know what I'm saying? But when you try to bundle it like, oh, we taking your position, you taking our jobs, blah, 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 but you don't have that same energy for the Mexicans in California. I was working, before I moved here to Boston, I was in California for a year and a half. You don't have that same energy for the Mexicans over there. You don't.
Well,
You don't.
Complex Design is actually in California. He's from Cali. So I'm pretty
Yeah. So you can see the whole thingy, and when you have somebody who was born here, that person grew up here, they're pretty much American. And then, when people are referring to these people, they be like, oh, they're trying to imitate us. They they're trying to act like us. They're not trying to act like you. That's them. They live here. They're Americans. And that's the biggest mistake. I know somebody said that earlier. The biggest strategic mistake of African Americans, because whites, when them Germans got here, they didn't say you were German, you were Polish. No, that's like, oh,
No, brother. Yes, they did.
I know
Yes,
the
they
history.
did.
At first, they went through a lot.
Yeah,
I
I
know
was
they
about to
went through a
say.
lot. The Irish went through a
Okay.
lot. I know.
No,
But
white people were divided though. Yeah, watch
yeah,
Game
they
of
were
No,
Thrones.
divided. But guess what? Are they still divided?
no, not
No.
necessarily, brother. But if you, I mean, you're in Boston, you know, in the West End, the North End, that's Italians. That's the Italian district. That's what they considered. But that's where they were forced to live because they were never considered to be white. So that's why Boston is broken up like that. You can look on the map and you can see it's still like that. People still
Yes, it is. It is. The Irish, the Polish, the Irish are mostly the policemen and the firemen and things. I understand that, but trust me. But overall, white, German, Irish, Polish, they're right here. But how come the blacks can be like, we got a Haitian, now we got one more black on our side. We got one more black in our group. Because when blacks were coming here, African Americans, because they were so colonized, they were not welcoming these people and integrating them within the fight, integrating them, show them what's happening, show them how to be part of the struggle. I know that some blacks, some Africans don't want to be part of the struggle, but don't tell me that you guys are welcoming with open arms, because I've been through it. I know what it is.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I reiterate some of the findings that was sent to me earlier, that I should go back to Barbados and fight the British government for its colonialism over Barbados. First of all, that's already been, that's already an ongoing battle. But the idea here is, if I have anybody to blame, it should be the British or the Europeans. My thing is that Africa's problems today treads back to colonialism. And so he comes back and he says, well, you can't keep blaming colonialism, even Obama said it. Yeah, you have to blame colonialism. The whole structure of the continent was developed under colonialism. So when you look at the lack of water in certain areas and lack of electricity and so on and so forth, civil engineering projects that are highly designed for extracting resources from the continent, exporting it back to Europe, that's the way it was designed. When decolonization took place by the Europeans leaving, they left the infrastructure as it was. Okay, they couldn't afford to keep it up because they couldn't afford to redevelop Europe and maintain the colonized territories. So they obviously left it as it was. But there were also major battles and struggles over the land reappropriation back to the native indigenous people. This is still an ongoing problem today. But if you let these hashtaggers tell you, they'll tell you it's the incompetence of the melanated sub-Saharan leaders. That's bullshit. Infrastructure doesn't grow overnight. You can look in America, New York City, plenty of potholes that are not filled, man. Bridges in Washington, in Minnesota and whatnot, that are considered to be condemned. I think the United States has over 800 bridges in this country that are considered to be unserviceable for automobiles in passing. We just had a bridge. Yes, sir.
I just want to put in a point after you're done, man.
Yeah. You have
just had a bridge in Florida just fall down near Miami, just drop, killed about 40 people. Just fell, and it was a new bridge. It was just put up. Just fell apart.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you try to have that conversation with these same hashtaggers, they'll say that doesn't matter. Look at Atlanta, look at DC, look at Baltimore. Okay, look at them. Highest disease capital in the country for Black people was in Atlanta, home of the CDC. But these same people don't want to have that conversation. So they'll point to Africa. Oh, that's a shithole country and a shithole continent. They always confuse it as a country, right? Shitholes over there, and lack of running water, eating mud pies and this type of stuff. When I got over there, I didn't see that in Rwanda. I saw a utopia. I said, if you want to run a Black society, if you want to build a Black society, look at Rwanda, look at Kigali. That's the way your society is supposed to run if it's Black. Women respecting each other, respecting men. I didn't see any fist fights there at all. Everywhere I went, people treated me with high regards and respect. Even in the hoods, walking around, laptop left out. My boy left his iPhone. Nobody stole anything. You try that here with ADOS or these hashtags, and I can guarantee you right now, that thing's gone, man. You got people doxing each other on here. I'm gonna get into all of that. But these same people don't want to have that conversation about what's going on here. They just want to talk about how much Nigeria doesn't have any running water. Yeah, right. Let's go to Man Friday. Oh, actually, let's go to the complex.
It was just a quick note on the infrastructure thing, because there's a notion or an idea that like once it's built, and infrastructure it's an ongoing evolutionary thing, right? As technology and people and migration and all of that transforms the environment, your infrastructure transforms with it, right? So it's an ongoing thing. It doesn't, you don't just build it and then that's it, right? Hence what you mentioned, the bridges dropping out and shit, right? You don't maintain things, you don't update things when things don't evolve with the times and all that, you get crumbling infrastructure, as they call it.
Absolutely.
So it's the same thing is the case there on the continent. And because of a lot of the changes in Europeans leaving, and then there's a bit of a vacuum, right? And now we got to figure out how to redistribute the resources prior to shit being interrupted by some people who came in and basically put us both in a lurch, right? Or all three of these groups in a lurch, So these are things that have to be worked out, and we cover it extensively as to what's being done to work it out. And there's a lot of solutions being proposed and put forth here that are going to basically maintain the longevity in that infrastructure going on into the future. That's why they're not fucking around on the continent. They're talking about blockchain as infrastructure and all this. They're not playing.
It's considered to be digital infrastructure, is what they call it.
Yeah. Go ahead, man. That's all I wanted to mention. That's all. That was it.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed, I was on a utilities project maybe 6-8 months ago, a water project, laying water pipes and mains, stuff like that. And one thing I noticed about so-called third world countries and stuff like that when they're doing projects is in the West, there is the private enterprise, and people are always negotiating with stakeholders, because when they want to lay a water main or water pipe in this case, they're going to have to find out. In the West, we find out who's going to benefit from it, which local government is going to fund it, or which private enterprise is going to fund it. I think this is when it comes to somewhere like Africa or some place like that, they don't factor in that they need the private funding, someone to carry the water, say, to a village, because they don't see that there's going to be any money made from them running water mains. I say 200 miles to some villages far away, or wherever the case. In laying the infrastructure in the UK, or somebody has to make money. It's always a money-making venture. So when it comes to the African stuff, it's kind of like they feel like we're doing it, but no one is really making the money. It's always the money-losing venture, or appears to be a money-losing venture, and they don't want to run as a charity. So when they come with these projects, there's always the will is not really there. There's no real financial and economic motivation for these things. And this is why these things take a long time, and they don't run on time, and it seems to be rather sloppily done. I'm talking about infrastructure now. Could be a different thing in technology. I'm not sure, regards to blockchain and all that stuff.
Well, the biggest project in American history was the Boston Big Dig project. Okay, started in 1991, ended in 2007. Okay, massive project. And this is working 3 shifts. That's how long it took just to build a tunnel that goes beneath the ocean. or Golden Gate Walk, the harbor itself. These people who criticize Africa don't understand the nuances it takes to erect something like this, man.
They don't understand. They do not understand. One thing I noticed working in construction and stuff like that, working on projects, one thing I would respect white folks for, they keep going until they find a way to do it. They don't stop day and night. They don't stop for breaks. When you have a day's work with them, you have a day's work. The stuff, there's no days off. It just keeps pushing. It keeps pushing. You'd be surprised what you can get done. Sometimes you can lift like 80,000, just tons and tons of material and just laying pipe and different stuff. A lot can get done. But when you translate that to other parts of the world, it seems like there seems to be impedances a little bit. So it just runs at a slower pace. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that it runs at a slower pace, and that the investment and the incentive behind it doesn't seem to be there. Now, why do I think the incentive and the investment is not behind it, generally speaking? Well, I think one thing that today's modern Africans haven't come to terms with the fact, because they can never explain why the government is, so removed from the people. It's like the government, everybody has the government, they've got billions of pounds in Swiss bank accounts and blah, blah, blah. They always say that stuff, where the people are kind of like struggling on the ground. And when you speak to African people about it, you ask them, like, what do they say about it? They say, our governments are corrupt. We don't know why. We don't know why. We don't know why. But in my estimation of it, how I check it is that, ever since the slavery epoch or the colonial epoch, it was a situation whereby there was the collaborators with Europeans, and they provided the Europeans with slaves. So it was kind of like a have and a have not type situation. But what happened is that translated into colonialism, and it was the same ruling classes, the same elitism that transferred into the colonial era, and that's still in power today. If you speak to an African person about it, they'll say, no, we had nothing to do with slavery. We were victims of the European, and that's not really the case. The collaborating elite has always been in power in Africa, so they don't identify with the people on the ground in the same way they don't identify with the people they put in ships across the Atlantic. They don't see no commonality with them. But when you speak to Africans today, they pretend they don't want to deal with that issue, so they can't explain why. They can't explain why their ruling powers don't have any sympathy for them, if you like. And that's the kind of like missing dynamic as to why there's no incentive to do for the poor, because they don't really identify with them because they're elitist. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, let's go to Renaissance Man.
Yeah, let's hear Renaissance Man as a hand up.
No, the only point that I want to make, I heard him making the comment that he was saying when he works with people who are white, there's a constant push and they seem to find a way. But I was like, if you even put them in up against the Chinese, I mean, everybody looks silly compared to the Chinese. I mean, I'll never forget looking at the news and seeing that they built a hospital in like 5 days over there in response to the coronavirus.
10 days.
Yeah, and we're sitting here like, what do we do? So I mean, let's not conflate, just these people do it so well. I mean,
Well, yeah, the thing is, man, this person tries to make it seem like Black people in America, Black Americans, what he wants to call himself, American Blacks, what he wants to call himself. Things are just so awesome, and it's like, no, go to the most 10 major cities in the United States that have high Black populations of up to 100,000 people, and you'll see that there is massive levels of poverty, massive levels of lack of access to quality healthcare. But let these people tell you, and they say, well, the best, Detroit is better than most of the cities in better than Nigeria as a whole, or something like that. When you make statements like that, what kind of conversation do you think you're going to entice from people like us? Where's the intelligence in what you're saying? I mean, I saw that in the chat earlier from somebody. You say that, but you don't have any control over Detroit. You have zero control. Native Americans can't even control their own land without private industry coming in and rolling their bulldozers right through it. And so there's a sense of delusion that I see a lot of Black Americans have, that they have this immense power that doesn't really show up in their environments, in their communities. And so they say, well, this side, Flint and Detroit are two separate areas. Okay, fine. Fine. But Black people as a whole don't control neither one of those areas. It's not like, well, if Black people just decided that they were going to replace the lead pipes in the ground in their respective cities, that's going to take place. They're going to have this big powwow in City Hall, and that's going to take place right now. Yeah, right. You're not funding it, and you're not making any decisions. So you're in no place to talk about what's going on another continent, in another country, in their decaying system, or their what's perceived to be a lack of infrastructure over there. You don't even control the infrastructure in your own country, man.
Mike, is it fair to say that in some communities, white Caucasian themselves sort of end up in the same position in regards to what you were talking about as African Americans? Corporation runs everything.
To an extent, but when white people were dissatisfied, things get moving, right? Somebody's connected to somebody through some form of family relation, right? But white people, even the poorest ones, benefit from the infrastructure and the political infrastructure that's in place.
That's
Donald Trump, who's a billionaire in his own right, has zero economic relationship to those who supported him on the ground.
And you played him like a fiddle.
At all.
Right, but they support him, right? They understand there's some symbolic relationship because they're both seen as white. But with Black people, they don't look at it that way. They think that, well, though, Nigeria is a shithole country because Trump said so, even though they've never been over there. Ask this person, where's the lack of running water, and they can't tell you. But
we'll challenge somebody who is from there. Amazing.
Right. But try to have a conversation about some of the poor, most impoverished places where Black people live in America. They don't want to have that conversation now. They'll just tell you about the great, the good suburbs or the good urban landscapes of Detroit somewhere. What the fuck?
You also,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you also can't compare one to the other. You can't compare, see, white people, you have a chance to ascend. Even if it's over generations, you're not going to get blocked out by the chance of skin color. Because if we could talk about the viciousness of capitalism in general, but it's a one thing when you have an opportunity to play the game. If you're being blocked out by skin color, you don't have the opportunity to play the game, so you can't make a comparison between Blacks and whites that are in the lower rung of society. There's a social caste system based on skin color.
Yeah, but these people believe that they are part of the
Elite.
the elites of America, the plutocrats. They believe that they are part of this group, and that they will defend this group over other Black people in the diaspora. Okay, that's how they see it. If it comes down between protecting white people,
but Mike, could you honestly, I'm just playing devil's advocate, and by the way, I know I talk with passion and things of that nature. I love my African Americans. Like, I fuck with them. Like that's I fuck with them 100%. Like, so I know people might generalize some of the statements of the things that are being said on here. I think I feel comfortable to say most of us of immigrant backgrounds, we deal with African American ADOS, whatever you call it, like on a day-to-day basis, with no difference than how we deal with our own brothers and families and sisters. So I just put that out. But I just want to play devil's advocate. Couldn't you create a little window of excuse for them that they have been colonized, their mind have been colonized? Some of the same thing that you guys were saying earlier as far as the Black leaders in Africa, they're not taking care of the people and things of that nature. And then there's a saying within the Haitian community, you can take a poor, homeless white man here and go to Haiti with him and make them a millionaire because the people's mind, when they see white skin, there's a certain, you know what I'm saying? There's a certain things they attribute to them, you know what I'm saying? And if you go over there, you know, now people might know that because there's a lot of technology and things of that nature. But I remember when I took my first trip back after being here in 10 years, after being here 10 years, I went back in 2009 and I was talking to my uncle. I'm telling him, look, there are some poor whites that are homeless that when I'm driving on the road, I'm giving him some money, and I could see the reaction through his eyes, like he couldn't believe it, like a white man being homeless, a white man being poorer than me, you know. So couldn't you create some window of opportunity, a window of excuse, so to say, for the African Americans here that you know their minds have been they have been colonized, and that's one of the reasons you know they have these xenophobic narratives they're pushing.
Well, that's what I said
Mr.
on.
G, let me.
That's what I said on the onslaught. Hold on, complex. That's what I said on the onslaught of this.
Yeah.
That these people are walking around with this colonized mindset and thinking that they can engage people who are trying to fight colonialism. I mean, we're talking about colonialism on a massive scale. It wasn't colonialism wasn't some walk in the park or something like that. The thing was brutal, man. That thing was massively brutal to not just from a slavery standpoint, but even on the continent, what they did to people was horrendous, man. And what I'm saying is the politicians, the leadership over in Africa who are not looking out for the best interests of the people on the ground, their days are numbered. But the reason why previously they weren't doing it is because the decolonization process is so long, and that the French have had their tentacles inside the Francophone states for so long, they're basically nothing but puppets. And so, yeah, you can point the finger and say, oh, well, you know, those Africans, man, they need to stop blaming colonialism. If you understood colonialism, you would not actually make that statement. But see, African Americans don't understand that because their relationship with white people is different than what the Europeans had over Africans. It's a vastly different experience. And they think that, well, why don't they just do this and why don't they just do that over there? That's not how it works, man. If you're talking about advancing the continent, accelerating it, the Europeans are going to come in there and disrupt that. That's why the Chinese coming in now have done more in the last 10 years than the Europeans did in 100.
Yeah.
But then these same people, these same African Americans who wrap themselves in the flag will say, oh, the Chinese are colonizing the continent. Nigga, you're colonized yourself. What are you talking about? Who are you fooling, man? Go ahead, John.
Hey, these hair stores, these beauty salon stores, that's just these are little colonies to me.
Yeah, look, man. I mean, I like to really be in the present, okay? Because that window you're talking about is now, and the medium is technology, right? So now we have an opportunity to kind of move out of that old paradigm, right? Where we were really thinking that way, where now we can actually sort of bridge resources between here and there. Okay, so it's kind of like you have to kind of unshackle like old concepts sometimes, right? You do have to sort of upgrade and evolve your thinking. Okay, I like let's look at this panel real quick here. I mean, we are pretty much across the board in this motherfucker right about now. When we really look at it, when we look at who's on the panel and who's in the chat, I mean, we are brothers that pretty much represent like just the scope. You know what I mean? Like just think about like this panel we got here and who's in attendance, right? And where we all come from, our origins and shit. Right? This is technology bridging us. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like now that we kind of have a bridge, we have the ability to kind of reconnect, refamiliarize ourselves with each other and shit. You know, like I'm real short on a lot of the bullshit that keeps us divided, especially at this point. Like the way shit's moving. Like I'll tell you right now, man. I in terms of, and this is coming from somebody who is by definition Atos, right? That would be me. By definition, I would be that. But dude, look, I got my first guap doing international business, so I see the benefits. I see the benefits of having contacts in different parts of the world. And if they look like me, shit, well, hey, even better, man. We could really break bread. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really how I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it like we at a time now where it's like shit, man. Like, you know, I could pull out the Mara phone or whatever, and you know, hit Mike. He over on the con. I'm like, hey man, I'm about to come through. Like, introduce me to your folks, you know, or I'll hit whoever wherever they at. Man, look, this is the time we in, man. We need to fucking leverage this shit.
Well, you got people on here who are saying that, you know, we're scared to debate about the Mara phone. We don't need to debate about
what the fuck, nigga? We got one.
We don't need to debate about it. It's already been imported. It's in our hands. What are you talking about? But see, they read these articles that are slanted in slight of what's going on the continent. And they run with it, and then they come here and they say, what do you think about this? I don't think anything. Get the fuck out of my face. I don't want to hear anything about whether or not the Mara phone was built really, is it really an African phone? Is it really not? No, you're not going to have that conversation with us. You've never even been over there for one. I was over there at the Mara phone store.
He was over there.
Okay. He has the phone. Complex has the phone. He's already imported. He imported that last year. So the conversation you're trying to have is really just a bunch of gossip. You really don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're
show and prove, man. It's got to be show and prove time. It's good when you go to the continent and you're speaking. You've got America, you've got the Caribbean, you've got Africa on the phone. But it's true what Complex is saying. That, you know, things can move very, very quickly now. And I don't know if this is a good thing or some people might see it as a bad thing, but it's definitely an opportunity that needs to be capitalized on 100%.
Thank you, brother.
You know, I mean, the rapping in the flag thing, I mean, it disturbs me a little bit, although I rock with ADOS. I do, like, when it comes to the dividing thing, I have a problem sometimes because I wonder, like, you know, I wonder, does that flag see you the same way you see that flag? These are things I think to myself sometimes, you know.
Man, look, let me tell you, put it like this, man, Friday. Like, I'm born and raised out here, right? SoCal, Southern California, right? So, like, I grew up, all of my homies, man, we were all, like, different. I had, like, all of my tight homies coming up, man. I had a homie that was, like, from West Africa. Okay, I had a homie who's from Guyana. I got homies that are from Panama. You know, I got homies that are brothers from the South. Like, I grew up clicked up with brothers from all over.
Same.
You know what I mean? And it was like we like, but like the common thing with all of us was this American experience.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So it really didn't matter where we came from. We was black and we was here.
But you know something I might just say about that. You know, speaking from the UK, yeah, we kind of like, we digged the US thing as well. You know, because your culture stretched, it's a global culture.
Yeah.
It started with the young black male of the metropolis. I don't know whether it's New York or whatever.
New York, yeah.
Yeah. So it might have started there, but it, you know, engulfed us all. So we all kind of identified with it.
That's the thing, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. We everybody who I'm my mid 40s now, everybody who's come from that time, you know, you kind of like, you were touched by it, and it became your culture as an aspect of it, you know. In the same way, you know, I'm Black British guy as well, families from the Caribbean as well. But you know, when it comes to the young black boy in the metropolis, we was all that.
But
go ahead.
Look at a lot of the cultural transfer that's happening though, man, that we don't really like take stock of. So if y'all remember, maybe like about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, he had that joint, This Is America, right?
That's right, yeah.
But when you watch the video, all the dancing was like African dances.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you go and watch the video again, all the kids, what do they look like? They're like African school children. And he got a fucking song called This Is America. Like, yo,
you're
like,
about to open a
I
whole
don't
different
really
topic.
get this shit.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
Hey,
with
listen,
I'm just saying, bro. Like
complaining
motherfuckers
about
really
movie
don't
roles.
understand the significance of this shit. Man.
No. Complex is making one hell of a point. When I was in Angola, and I was there, and we were at a club in Luanda, and I sat down and I saw people wearing New York Giant jerseys.
Yeah, you
They-
told me
they-
about this.
They spoke Portuguese. Now I'm fluent in the Portuguese, so I was able to bop off. But a lot of these dudes were kind of dipping around, trying to be like Americans. And they knew I was.
100%.
And I came in there. Now I was the real deal because I had my real Yankee shirt on. He was like, "Oh, this is the real deal up in here." But at the end of the day, they were rolling with our culture very heavily.
100%. In the UK, we wear Brooklyn t-shirts and New York sweatshirts.
Our
All of that.
our shit is international, okay?
It's
And the
100%.
Africans and the Africans are down with it, man. They feeling you on that, all right? And they were coming at me with love. When I was in Angola, I got love, and the reports that I was getting before rebels on the edge of town and all this fuckery. Right, but it was
They're gone.
With a British accent from BBC.
some of the biggest lies that I'd ever seen. People there, all these people that they spoke beautiful Portuguese. They a lot of a lot of them had excellent educations. They had a fast growing middle class. I mean, and they loved you over there. So our culture and how we dress and how we look, they wanted to be that way as well.
Yeah, man.
They liked it. They liked it. They
Hey,
weren't trying to just
Nagone,
you.
Nagone, in LA, I mean, in New York, do you recall?
You got to understand it. But when you travel internationally, you see some of this, then you know how this is played. Mike can tell you, all these other brothers here can tell you what's going down with respect to that. So when I start hearing this bullshit about, well, hey, and they don't like you. I mean, it's just it's bullshit. It's just bullshit. And I understand somebody trying to say Mike is a punk for not wanting to debate some skewed Negro. Get the fuck out of here, man. You know that shit is crazy.
He said I had cold feet. I must have left my Crocs.
Cold feet,
Cold
nigga.
feet.
You
Well,
in Boston? What are you talking
he had
about?
something else that was cold, but I don't want to say it in here. But
Very
these
familiar with
dudes
cold.
are highly finished. A lot of these Negroes are highly finished. And that's when I sit here and I see, and we had one brother who's supposed to be intelligent. I don't know if he's a doctor or whatever, about shithole countries, no running water, all this craziness. Man, get you Negroes, get up out of here with some. Get up out of here with that, man. Get out of your feelings, man. Get a broader view of this thing. All right. Trust me, when a lot of these African nations were getting their freedom, it was Americans who, many of us were there, and crewmen, all of them were coming here to this country. To sit down and talk about this stuff. They were here. Kenyatta and all them. They were here. And then we were going there. I don't want to hear this craziness that these people here are talking about. I'm sick of listening to these skewed, crazy, fucked up Negroes here on YouTube. A lot of these guys, I think some of these guys have mental problems. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just breaking it down how it is.
Right, you're on point.
Cats out here travel and see things around. Know what the deal is. Tired of this crap, man. Mike, you afraid to talk to this guy? Come on, man. That's some of the craziest shit I ever heard. But you have to understand from what Negro this came from. This is the same guy that said only 3% of black people were literate in sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, wait, how's Mike afraid to talk to him? I mean, we're having
Mike
an
just
open
came from
chat
Rwanda.
right now.
He just came from Rwanda. I mean, these people are making these types of statements.
No,
this is insane.
No, the idea is I was afraid to debate this person, okay, on TPOT.
God, get the hell out of here, really.
What I'm saying here is
madness, man. Madness.
If you're not for Pan-Africanism, if you're not for the solidarity of black people on a global scale, and the liberation of melanated people on a global scale, there's nothing for us to talk about, man. There is no debate. What is there to debate about?
What are we debating?
You love your American flag. You wrap yourself up like a blanket, your little blankie, so to speak. And I don't want anything to do with that.
The thing is, Mike, the thing is now this, if you go on the thinking black man in YouTube, the show and prove era, you really don't have to listen to those type of people anymore. Why I like the Black Brain Trust and channels like this is because you come with the facts and then you can show and prove. You don't need to get into these idle debates, these long drawn out talks and the back and forth. There's no longer need for it. All you need to do is just come up with your thing, represent it, you know, the facts, and then just move on. Like, don't get
But
tied down in the mix-up.
yeah, but really and truly though, I think from where all of these some of these things that we've been talking about last tonight, I
Mhm.
think where they're coming from, I think it is it's kind of dangerous to a certain extent, right? It should be concerning because I think it's the susceptibility of many blacks here for propaganda.
Mhm.
Because you you see recently all these talk as pertains to African actress stealing in U.S. roles, blah blah blah. Blah. But Idris Elba been acting here in this country for like over 2 decades. Like what the fuck? And these conversations are like pretty new.
Not necessarily, but you always had these sort of they were kind of a fringe element within Black society here in America. But the point here is that they're the social media has
Again,
allowed them,
social media reinforce it.
yeah, social media has allowed them to have a megaphone that they didn't have before. And so the point that I'm making here is that, you know, they'll continuously this is actually an interesting book, and I wish we can actually we should actually read this, Nicole. I know you read it, but I think we should actually do a live stream on it. You know, White Trash, the 400-year untold.
Ooh, Mike called me up one day, man. I actually I was playing the audio book on my computer, and you heard it. He's like, what's going back there, man? You guys run a Dom game or something?
Thought you were reading a Dom game novel or something like that.
I run a Dom game novel. It was hilarious. But yeah, Eisenberg's book it's superior. And she really kind of breaks it down and really gets into this class game and really just elucidates a lot of where we are. And you can see some of the things that you go on. So when you start looking at the Trumps and a lot of other stuff that's going on, there's a huge and very strong explanation for a lot of this. But anyway, we should break some of this down. On another live stream. But I do suggest that people, to take a look at that if they can. I know people are not heavy on reading, but I like to read or at least listen to good audiobooks as well. And then that was a very good one. Anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, the point that I was making was that I just lost my place here.
White Trash.
No, it wasn't White Trash. It was actually an image I was looking at earlier about poverty. Anyways, white people being, there's massive levels of poverty in this country with Black people, and these people don't want to have a conversation about it because it would actually highlight the failures of their own government. And so what they want Black people to do, what they wanted me to do, was to go point the finger at the, at my government in Barbados. It's not my government. I'm not a citizen there. So why would I even do something like that? But that's the mentality, right? The colonized Negro, house Negro, right? We sick boss, we's good boss, all that sort of jive talk, man. These guys it's disgusting, man. It's disgusting to hear these guys talk like this.
So, Mike, when was the last time you was in Barbados?
Oh man, that had to be turn of the millennium, 2000, something like that.
Oh, okay, well, a long time ago. Okay,
I'm going back.
A lot since.
Yeah, I'm going back this year. So, because there's
just once this COVID-19 thing is over.
Yeah, I was supposed to go back earlier, man, but I had my agenda was to hit the continent before anything else.
Yeah.
Hey, can we talk about this COVID-19 thing a little bit? As far as propaganda, I've seen some Black people on Facebook saying, "Oh, look how much, how low the infected numbers are in Africa. It's because there are not 5G towers in Africa." Why do you guys think? Why is that? Why are the numbers relatively low? I mean, super low.
Africans are insulated. They've been insulated, and they've been able to. The government has been able to get ahead of it. When I was there, nobody had it. It was only people coming from Europe that had it.
The only people come from Europe that's bringing it into this island as well.
The Chinese, Kenya, I know Kenya in particular, kicked out a lot of the Chinese and blocked a lot of Chinese flights coming in back in December. So they did not have exposure to it initially. So they were already ahead of the game. The problem is the media wants to spin this narrative, or at least black media, what's considered to be black media here. They want to spin this narrative that you know, black people, I shouldn't say black people, but Africans, you know, they didn't have it because of 5G or something like that. There's always this sort of connection to 5G, even though we've gone over this a dozen times already. There's no correlation between the two. Europe didn't have 5G either, and yet they still had massive deaths in Italy and Spain, right? So it's just a matter of installation for one, and preventative measures too. They were first out of the gate to get ahead of this, and that's why they have so few deaths. The deaths that you're hearing about are people who came from Europe and landed there, and then they end up dying.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey, just real quick, I was talking.
I
Muted himself. He muted himself.
Metro PCS throttling the speeds again.
I don't know if it's Metro PTS.
Hey, Metro PCS got good service now.
Yeah, I think it's Google Fi he's using, but let's go.
And Mike,
Yes,
you know what? I think it's some of the same conversations for, like, I guess in Haiti, supposedly there are some cases. I think they are in the teens or whatnot.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard and what some of the scientific heads have said, it might be, I don't think it's just because Africa and Haiti are insulated. Well, Haiti is not really insulated because it's like right there down the street. I think it's because of two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
These countries,
Mm-hmm.
these third world countries, quote unquote, there are a certain type of vaccine they're supposed to take. There's some vaccines you're supposed to take. See, me, I have a little, if you find most Haitians that were born in Haiti, I don't know if it's the same thing for Africans, you can find on our arms a mark that's been there since birth, where we got this vaccine shot. It's for TB. Whenever I get tested here in America, I got tested in the military, I got tested another time for a job that I was going for, my TB test always come back positive. The reason it always come back positive because of the vaccine that I took in Haiti. I guess they sort of put the TB in me. If you guys been in the loop with what's being talked about as far as vaccine and this COVID-19 thingy, supposedly that vaccine, that TB vaccine, BCG, some kind of crap like that is the name. It's very resistant towards, I guess it seemed to be resistant towards COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other reason why I think, as far as black population might feel their immune system might, they might seem to have better immune system even than the white men who eat better than us, who have all the food, all the fat food, all the good food and stuff like that, all the money to afford anything they want. In Western countries like America and a few other countries around Europe, they don't breastfeed their children like we do in Haiti and Africa. When you breastfeed your children, a child that's breastfed and a child that's not breastfed, there can be, and I'm not sure how accurate that is or whatnot, but you can kind of see it, right? A mother that's breastfeeding their kids, if the mother is sort of passing your gene and your immunity to that child. And these people here in these other countries, in these Western countries, they don't get breastfed.
Well, I want to make sure that you understand this, that we covered COVID-19 with Dr. Phoenix, who's in the chat, who actually works in the healthcare profession. And what you're saying is is incongruent with his experience in dealing with the pandemic. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that we kind of covered this a dozen times already. But I need to move on to some of the comments in the chat. Paul Bryant says that, and good evening to Paul Bryant as well. He said, slavery ended 155 years ago. Why tie yourselves to slavery? Learn from the past, but don't be captive to it. Move on and stop begging for handouts. Create the reality you want to see. Anybody on the panel want to take on his comment? You guys will mention Robert F. Smith, but he didn't beg for reparations or any other handouts. He learned and created his reality. I don't understand why the self-victimization mindset.
Well, for me personally, I've forged my own path. I feel I have at least a mere modicum of success in absence of what I feel is owed. In my particular case and circumstances, I feel as though if somebody stole a bike from me 10 years ago, he still stole my bike, and if I see that bike, it's mine. I don't care how long it's been. And from that perspective, even though I don't need reparations, I feel as though if there's an injustice, and there's people out there who, for whatever reason, may not be as fortunate as I am. I think that those people that definitely like here's my thing. If you don't agree with the concept of reparations, you don't want reparations. If reparations ever did come to pass, just deny your check, say I don't want it. It's that simple. I mean, nobody complains about Native Americans, nobody complains about the Jewish. But when it comes to blacks, because we feel as though if obviously there's a certain component, of our quote unquote group that has used slavery as a crutch and use that as an excuse for their lack of productivity. And I'm not making any concessions for them in that particular regard, but I still think that it makes a statement that things that happen to us as a collective, there is no justice served, but for other groups there was justice served. That makes a statement. That makes a statement that we're not as important, that we don't matter, that our opinion doesn't matter, that our collective buying power, our impact on the economy is irrelevant. I think that's more important than anything.
I'm trying to understand. I agree, but let me jump in there for a second. I'm trying to understand Paul's context, because I'm not sure where in the conversation he's jumping in at, because that has nothing. It's not connected to what we were talking about earlier. But he can feel free to elaborate on the context that he's referring to, because I don't know.
You just read from
generally speaking, I agree with most of what he said. It's just that I don't classify reparations as a handout. I don't classify.
It's a legitimate justice claim.
Yeah, but I am against. Yeah, but I am against us, like always structuring our politics around some type of handout. I think that is a problem that a lot of us have. It's not all of us, but I think that is an issue, and I disagree with that too.
It's called race capitalization. You can kind of if you can play on the heartstrings or pull on the heartstrings of many impoverished people.
Real quick, Mike V. Real quick. I'm sorry. I want to jump back in here real quick. So when we look at the current economic calamity that we're faced with right now, there could be an argument made that people should have better prepared for such a possibility, as I did. I saved up enough of my income where I don't have to work for a year. Now, obviously, I'm in the healthcare field, so I am actively working and still collecting a paycheck. But if for whatever reason I couldn't go to work, I'm fine from a financial standpoint. But even in my position where I have made the necessary preparations for such an event like we're going through right now, that doesn't mean that I feel like, this proposed stimulus package, whether it be a one-time or whether it be some type of recurrent stimulus check on a monthly basis, do I feel like people aren't owed? Because what is the purpose of giving somebody money when they could have actually prepared themselves as a competent adults? They understand the fragility of the economy. They understand the ramifications of not saving. They understand, the necessity of money, currency in this day and time. The bartering is a little bit passe, so to speak. I mean, we could revert to bartering, but as of right now, we rely on currency. And so for those people that didn't save their money, I guess the same argument could be made. I know this is not we're comparing apples to oranges here, obviously, but my point is that again, because I think that when we look at Black people as a collective and how we squander a lot of our opportunities, we oftentimes feel as though if we don't deserve it, or that we'll just blow the opportunity if we did get it. And that's no excuse. I mean, I think that that's a disservice. If there's one person that's deserving, I won't say, I think everybody's deserving, whether or not, regardless of their situation, but if there's one person that would be responsible with a reparation if they got it, then I think that is owed to everybody. At least give them an opportunity. If they blow it, they blow it. But I'm not in a position to make that decision for somebody else.
I mean, even if you don't want it, they have to dole it out because it's a just due, right? Something has to go somewhere. And so I think, and Paul Bryant is just basically saying, instead of being productive, it's the same crying point, slavery, justices, etc. Yeah, we have to understand that what redlining and most of these institutional injustices have done to a community. I mean, the way the Black community has been treated is no different than North Korea, no different than Cuba, no different than Venezuela, no different than Iran, no different than Russia. Sanctions on Russia, sanctions on Black America.
I would disagree with that.
You excuse me?
I would actually disagree with that because, yes, it is very much true that, there have been sanctions on that stuff, but at the end of the day, these are people who have their own countries, they have their own borders. You can't really compare that to African Americans here, where they're essentially living within a large society. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So they, whatever happens to Black people here is going to determine on what the large population does. I'm like, for example, the U.S. can throw all the sanctions they want at Russia, but at the end of the day, I can bet you America will never actually try to fight Russia. You know what I'm saying? It's different. You know what I'm saying? And plus, think about it. The reason why Russia is in the state it is right now, a lot of it is really self-inflicted. Because think about it, after the Soviet Union fell and the Central Soviet Bank fell, you sort of saw this rise of the oligarchy, and sort of, Putin has sort of been pushing more of this oil to the economy. And my thing is this: if Putin was smart, I'm not Putin is smart, but if I was him, I would try to tap into the Chinese market that is right across the border and try to help them sort of develop the Russian economy.
What do you think they've been doing the last 10 years?
Well, obviously that's what they've been trying to do, but
not trying to do is what they've been doing. $400 billion gas deal between Russia and China 2 years ago.
Well, okay, well that's good, but my thing is this, but see, this also goes. This actually adds up to what I was saying. At the end of the day, that's why you can't compare these groups to African Americans in the U.S. because they can still move independently from whatever the United States does. While whatever the U.S. does here, whatever laws are passed here, directly affects the Black population here. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we can't really compare.
I think you're misunderstanding what sanctions are.
Can I jump in for a second, Mike?
I understand.
I think I understand what he's saying.
Yeah, I know what he's saying.
A country can always look.
There's still a way around for a country.
But the idea of you're punishing a country for not.
But a country can always go around sanctions, man. I'm like, come on.
No, they cannot. No, they cannot. Ask Cuba. Can they go around U.S. sanctions?
No, Mike. I think what I think he's getting at is, for example, if people another country that U.S. puts sanctions on, you at least have some countries that you can, reach out and do business with.
Yeah, as I'm
you
saying,
have your own sovereign institutions that you still control. Versus Black people in this country, we really don't have a central bank.
Yeah.
Or
Well, that's been discussions that we've been having on here, right? We discussed many times the last couple of years about an African American Union and a banking system based on cryptocurrencies, right? There's ways of getting around that part. But what I'm saying is the collective punishing of another country because of whatever the leadership or whatever their political ideology is no different than what they're doing to black people.
Mike, you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah, I can still hear.
Yeah, so the collective punishing of another group of people, Koreans, Persians, Russians, Venezuelans, Cubans, and so on and so forth, that's a part of the same narrative that is being played against African Americans. When you think about redlining, when you think about stop and frisk, when you think about, these are all forms of sanctions. That's all I was saying. It's not really that difficult.
That is very much true, bro. I you know what? Thank you for elaborating what you were saying. But my thing is, right, one thing I hate is how black people, we always try to align.
But that fiction though, like if you like,
oh, Mr. G,
nah, because
Mr. G, he's still speaking.
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah, to finish up. Look, I get what you're saying, bro. And by the way, just to kind of add some more context to what I'm saying, for those who may not know, like I'm actually West African. Like, you know, my family's from West Africa, so I'm sort of like a killmonger in the way that, you know, I have West Africa. My parents are West Africa. I'm from West Africa, but I sort of grew up here, so I sort of got to see both sides. You know what I'm saying, the African American and the African side. But see, to add on to what you were saying, look, one thing I hate about black people is that we always try to include every other group. Oh, what about the Vietnamese? What about, like, these groups have made it very clear they don't want to be aligned with you at any cost.
That's not necessarily true, brother. It's not necessarily true.
I was gonna say the Vietnamese, like, you've heard stories of black soldiers coming back from Vietnam who literally said, you know, Vietnamese soldiers would tell them to duck when they were firing at them because they were like, you're not our enemy.
Yeah, well, that's what Muhammad Ali was getting at. Remember, he said it wasn't the Viet Cong that called me nigga, right?
Yeah, but look, those are, come on, bro. Those are anomalies. Yes, you're gonna have, you know, situations like that. For example, I could definitely make the argument that Puerto Ricans are much more favorable to black people. By the end of the day, we all know when it comes to the Hispanics as a group, they don't have the best view. They don't treat black people as well. We talk about Mexicans and even some Venezuelans, even from Central Americans. I'm like, come on, bro. Just because you have a certain group of people who may view black people in some positive way, like the Chinese are showing us that they're really no less racist than white folks. It's just that they're just not as oblivious about it. I'm like, think about it. China just passed a new permanent resident law where they will allow foreigners to become permanent residents. And you got Chinese folks going online and talk about, we don't want black people in our country. And I'm like, hold up. All the Chinese government said was that it was just for foreigners. But the fact that you're specifically targeting black people in general, that already tells me what I need to know. You know what I'm saying? So.
Well, I mean, I don't even know how the conversation got to that point, but go ahead, Renaissance Man.
No, the only thing I was gonna say, like, yeah, but when you look at something like that with China, like, that's a few people complaining versus when you look at the alternatives of how Africans have been treated. I mean, that doesn't look too bad. I mean, you can have permanent residency there. You may have some complaints, but
yeah, but bro, to add on to what you were saying, I'm like, there was a Chinese restaurant in Nigeria that was shut down. Do you know why?
Yeah, I know about. Yeah.
They refuse. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. How are you? I'm like, could you imagine the audacity? Imagine, for example, right? If I'm a Nigerian, right, and I start opening a shop in the United States, and I refuse to serve the food to Americans. I'm like the audacity it would take for me to even pull something like that. That already lets you know what I'm talking about. And on top of that, you have this. Look, I'm not saying all Chinese people think like this. All I'm saying is that if Africans are gonna start dealing with the Chinese, they need to do to China what the Chinese did to America. You work with them from a distance. You know, you try to leverage the situation. You get the development, but never do you ever treat them as friends. That's what the Chinese did when it came to the Americans. They allowed them to come. They smiled, but they had their hands crossed in the back. And when the time came and they showed these white folks what they were doing, and all of a sudden they want to get mad. That's what Africans do. Don't be out here looking goofy, pretending that these Asians are going to be any better. Work with them, be smart. That's what I'm saying.
Let's go to Mr. G. You guys hand up.
The only thing I was about to say is that the comparison you make to black people here and these sanctions and whatnot. I mean, it's when you have a sanction to your blackness, to you, just it's a sanction to your existence,
Right.
not a sanction in regards to your actions. These
Exactly.
countries, they get put on sanctions because of actions. When you get put on sanctions because of your mere existence, because of your blackness, because you're black. I mean, if you're white, that your person can be white. That's their existence. I mean, you didn't choose to be black. Those countries, whatever action they chose to take those actions. So therefore, they get put a sanction, and maybe perhaps a lot of the times there might have been warning before they got to that point or whatnot. But you, as a black person, you just pop out and you just boom, you're here as an existence, as a person, and then but boom, this get put on you before you even did anything. I mean, I
Um,
think your analogy was good, but it was just little. It wasn't right
yeah,
on the
I
target, and that's where I think the brother was coming from earlier. That's why I feel like it's a little bit different because a country
yeah,
actually have to do something. There has to be a reaction. The sanction is more like most sanctions are reactions. I mean, you guys can enlighten
But
me
they're forms
with
of
other.
punishment. What I'm saying is they're forms of punishment. It's collective
yes,
punishment, right? So
Mike, bro.
your
I'm not
average
the
Iranian
yes,
doesn't have
yeah.
anything to do with the theology of Iran itself, but they are being punished for it,
So,
right?
so, so you're basically saying, I think we're kind of talking past a
Your
little
mic is
bit.
breaking
What
up,
we're
right?
basically saying, you're saying, Mike, is there all?
Your mic is breaking up, right?
Um,
Oh, no, I was gonna say, the only thing is, you see it basically as, hey, they're all being collectively punished. We're just arguing, I think, that some people have better, I guess, tools to respond to that punishment.
that's exactly what I'm saying.
I think we're
Yeah,
talking
saying,
past each other.
yeah, but that's the post effect of it, right? That's post sanctions is the way they deal with it. But I'm saying for black people, the way black people are being treated is no different than how they treat these other countries in terms of the collective punishing of people. The collective, look at what they're doing in Venezuela right now. They're blocking all the ships that are supposed to be bringing in masks, gloves, and disinfectant and things like that to deal with coronavirus, right? The COVID-19. That's
Yeah,
a
after it gets to that
hard
point,
decision,
yeah,
right?
I understand.
Right. But when you look at
okay,
the
so Mike, so essentially, what you're saying is this, is that um even though black people and nations get collectively punished, you're saying that for black people it's something as if like you're born being punished, while other countries they have to fuck up
Exactly.
before they get punished. So that's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
yeah, I'm just saying that the punishment is the same. The punishment is the same, right? Banking, financial institutions, right? Access to loans, access to mortgages.
I see what you mean. It is like a sanction.
Yeah, it's a form of sanctions, right? You're punishing black people for not being able to be a part of the privileged class. But see, these hashtaggers, they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. They just want to talk about clean water in Nigeria. That's weird to me. I don't want to have that conversation because one, you don't live there, and two, you don't plan on going there to help them fix anything anyways if there's something wrong. And you're not
I
gonna
think I,
you're not gonna do anything here either.
I think they themselves have bought into the whole American dream
Mhm.
supposedly, and really and truly, I think I hate to say that it's part of it, right?
Mhm.
Though it is them buying into the American dream, but then they're looking like others who are not who quote unquote American being closer to the American dream than them. And that makes a lot of people feel some kind of way. And I can kind of understand that. Hell, if I'm in Haiti and some schmo Joe come from somewhere and I'm struggling, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing these schmo Joe, they got like PhDs and IT, they're getting good jobs, they integrating in the economy, they're in the military, they enjoying these benefits, and I'm like, damn, I've been here in Haiti, man. I've been had to fight these fights, I guess, they perceive, and that's the narrative I don't like. How they say by themselves, only by themselves. I mean, yeah, African Americans did make the way for us, and a lot of us we understand that. But when you try to make the narrative, it's like, oh, we only win these rights. We are only fighting them by ourselves, and then now they're coming and taking our jobs, and they're taking our benefits of the things we fought. And I think that's where the feelings is coming from. They feel like they want to be part of the American dream. They have bought into this whole American dream. They think there's still an American dream out there for them to reach. So now they're looking at this other person who's not really the quote unquote American being closer to the American dream, and that shit will make a nigga feel some kind of way.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and brother, I'm so happy you brought up the whole, Africans and the whole look. Let's be honest here. Most Africans know that when they come here, that African Americans sort of laid the groundwork and everything. And I have to say, there is a lot of ignorance. Because when I first came here, I had the same thoughts, because I went to school, I had a 4.0 and shit. I was like, why are black people in America just here with all the opportunity to live in the ghettos? But see, what ended up happening is, as I went and did my own research, as I started to learn about redlining, as I started to start going deeper into the books, I started to understand that, oh shit, it's actually deeper than what I'm seeing. Because, for a lot of Africans, like, we don't really see the quote unquote, the older African Americans, right? The age of the Martin Luther Kings. All we see is Martin Luther King, right? We don't really see those images of like African Americans back then who were families, they were working together. I'm like, there was a time in America where there were more black people married than there were white people. But see, we don't really see that. We like Africans, the other diaspora does not see the images of a time where African Americans literally had more money in their communities than white people. There was a time in America. We don't see, all we see on TV is Lil Wayne all across the world as a black diaspora. So when we come here and then we see the quote unquote the ghettos, that view sort of gets reinforced. But see, for me, for a lot of people, when you go deeper and you actually start looking at the book, you say, oh my God. I remember, I think a year ago when I was watching, some guy in the Black Manosphere, and he was showing me pictures of, of his great grandfather. And I was seeing, African Americans in communities with grandfather, children. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen this. All I ever see like, this is not the image I see of African Americans on TV when I came over here. You know what I'm saying? And now here I am finding out that just like 60, 80 years ago, in like the 1800s, 1700s, African Americans had entire communities. You know what I'm saying? Like they like back then, the communities back then would have easily been able to integrate with the black diaspora everywhere because they had strong foundations. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not now because of all of the dysfunction, but I think that's the reason why a lot of people come over with those views, because they never get to see that image. They don't see that picture. You know what I'm saying? And trust me, when they come over here, and here's one thing, right? Because most Africans, they grew up in countries, and this is why I kept bringing up the whole thing of, owning your own country, right? Nigerians, Ethiopians, right? They come from their own countries. The men control the countries they're from for the most part. Now, you can make the argument that when it comes to the leadership, they're controlled by white supremacy, but yes, but overall, the men are going to control that country, right? So they don't understand the idea of living within a greater society. You know what I'm saying? That's why they see, when they come over here, it's easy for them to say, y'all should be pulling yourself by bootstraps, do harder work. But when they get to America and they are no longer the majority, they're not the minority, and they are now working within a greater society, and they start experiencing racism, that's when all of a sudden now they start to understand what y'all talking about. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden now, all these things about white supremacy that they were saying was BS. All of a sudden, now a lot of these Nigerians, for example, did you guys realize that Donald Trump, I think, recently cut off visas from Nigeria or something like that? He did that recently. And a lot of Nigerians were like, oh my God. A lot of Africans were like, oh my God. I said, and I'm like, hold up. What is it? Because look, Nigeria, the reason why I keep bringing up Nigeria, because they're the most like prideful of all the African immigrants. They do it the worst. So usually when they come over here, they load down everybody else, right? So my thing is this, with the Trump administration cutting them off, now they can't come here anymore, like for a long time. Now all of a sudden the crime, white supremacy, I'm like, hold up. But see, when y'all come over here and African Americans over here talk to you about white supremacy, you say work harder. But see, now that same white dude not cut you off from those visas, now you want to cross supremacy. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is that that's the reason why there is that view. And look, I'm not gonna look. The last thing I'm gonna do is come here and be disingenuous and just deny that those sort of builds of my own bullshit don't exist. I understand those views exist in the African community, but I think that it's starting to change, especially with the whole Nigeria, Trump cutting out those Nigerian visas. I think that's the clear message to everybody that, hey, look, just because we let you over here and we coddle you and we can call you the quote unquote the honorable immigrants, you're still a nigga, and we're ready to cut you off anytime. And I think that's what's going on. So yeah.
All right, let's get some closing thoughts here, man. If anybody have any closing thoughts they want to share.
Yeah, I had stepped away, Mike, but I was listening in. Hey, Hammer, shout out, bro. Hey, nice for you to drop through, man.
Thank you, man.
That's all. I just want to, say, peace and good chop up, man.
Yeah. I definitely want to say, good game, guys. Chop up some good game. We have to talk the national, international piece. I know some people have a real issue with it, but hey, man, at the end of the day, the brothers who have traveled, who are in the know, who are involved, and who are making moves, know this is very important for us to work on. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. Guys that just want to isolate themselves in one corner, that has never been how we've been successful. Never has been, never will be. So I just want guys to take a broader view. That's how we have to look at this.
It's a great debate, as always. Always like listening to the Black Brain Trust. Just keep doing what you're doing, Mike, and everybody on the panel.
Yes, sir, Mr. Friday.
Yeah, and to sort of wrap up and just to wrap it up. One thing I'll say is this, I'm very much proud of Complex Design of Mike and everybody on this panel because, you guys, I think, are laying the groundwork for some real Pan-African movement. Now, here's my thing, right? I definitely do understand the sort of beliefs that, when you look at the Pan-African movement, most of the time it's really been African Americans like Mike and Complex Design who sort of been. They're typically the ones who go to Africa and do all the work, and rarely would you ever see a reciprocation. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely understand that sort of viewpoint, even as a guy who's 18 years old. But here's one thing I'll say, is that the reason right now that you're seeing the Chinese going to Africa, the reason right now that you're seeing Japan go there, is because they're going to be the next market in terms of once China sort of develops and overtakes the United States. So, for example, right, when the U.S. became the economic superpower of the world, they understood they needed economic partners to sort of help facilitate their power. So they sort of established Europe as sort of that partnership, you know what I'm saying, and South Korea and stuff. China, on the other hand, they understand that if they are to overtake the United States, they're going to need their own set of economic partners as well. And they've sort of decided that Africa is going to be that whole, that sort of partner. So what does that mean? If my predictions come true and we see China overtake the U.S., which I think is going to happen very soon, you're going to start seeing them sort of push towards developing West, South, Central, or even East Africa as an attempt to make them sort of an economic bloc that they can leverage against Europeans. So that because they don't like the Chinese do not like the fact they have to rely on European economy. They want to expand everywhere else. So they want to build these economic relationships with other countries, like especially in Africa. This way, if European countries try to pull off the same sanctions, tariffs that Trump did a couple of months ago on China, they won't be effective. See, Trump doesn't understand that when he pulled the whole tariff thing, this just reinforced the Chinese perspective that, hey, look, we can't be relying on Western sort of economics for long. We're gonna have to expand because at any point, these white dudes can just all of a sudden start blowing shit up. Because the fact that Trump was willing to essentially destroy his own farmers just so that he could keep them at the bottom lets you know what they'll do. So my thing is, keep the faith, keep the fight. And I have said many times before that the only way that Africa is going to move forward is if you have sort of a confederation of states. of sub-Saharan Africa, which I think is a little crazy, but I know you guys are laughing in the back. It's cool. It's okay. It's okay. But anyway, thank you guys for letting me on the panel, and like, and by the way, look, sometimes I'm long-winded, but it's what it is.
All right. Who else? Anybody else have something you want to close out with before we get out of here?
No, I was just gonna say thanks, Mike, for always having these chats. Always enjoy chopping it up with you guys.
All right. I just want to make sure I respond to this person in the chat. Israelite International Chauvinist Patriarchy. He says that my advice for the Black Brain Trust group is to stay off of Atos versus Diaspora and stick to tech. We're actually not a tech channel, contrary to popular.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we're not a tech channel.
I suggest before you make that type of statement or claim, you get familiar with just who the fuck we really are.
Easy.
Look at the community tab.
Well, first and foremost, first and foremost, there's no reason why anyone should not be able to discuss something that directly affects them. Everybody on here is affected by the dynamic between those that are indigenous to this country and those that immigrated here, whether it be first, second, or third, fourth generation. It doesn't matter. We're all affected by that dynamic. And so this is the reason why we have a right to have this discussion. And I know that there's some people on YouTube that feel as though if, people should be sticking to content and shouldn't even be having panels whatsoever. I've heard that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that type of mindset is the reason why YouTube is wide open the way it is. You can do whatever you want on your own channel.
But it's Triz.
And if you don't want to tune in, you don't have to. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, Triz, you know what? Here's the thing, man, and I'm sorry for doing that, but dude, I get real short with that kind of stuff because, see, once you get a panel of international brothers, right, and we're talking about how to create that wavelength where we see each other as such, no matter where we are. Okay, that's true diasporatic thought. Okay, so you don't come here and speak against something like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing
you simply don't do it.
His other statement was basically, it will be a revolving door argument and lead to nowhere.
There's no argument here.
Yeah, there was no argument for me.
No argument.
They came to the channel and said that what we were posting was inaccurate and that we're deceiving our subscribers. But what I'm saying here is that we already put in the due diligence for all of the content. The docket is in the description beneath the video, every single live stream. So when you say, we should stay away from these topics and stick to tech, we're actually not a tech channel. Our biggest, our most widely viewed streams are actually our geopolitics. It's not even the tech, it's the geopolitics that people seem to like because it attracts all groups of people, not just Black. And so I'm just making the point that tech is not really, it's very much below our most widely viewed videos. In fact, our open chats are more.
I was gonna say they get more views than even the geopolitics.
Yeah, people like the stuff that's not tech, so we wouldn't actually stick to tech. It's just one of those things, man.
I don't know. We're also car guys. What would you say to that?
Yeah.
We're also, some of us are weed heads and we do cannabis hangouts. What would you say to that?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I think people don't want us treading these way in these discussions because they think that it's a revolving door, but at the same time, it has to be discussed. It's not something we can keep avoiding. We can't put our head.
Mike, I mean, isn't that kind of what 3.0 is predicated upon, right? It's no longer a revolving door when you're in this realm.
Yeah.
Hello.
All right, shalom.